Good meeting. Microphone now. Call to order the regular meeting of the Lakewood City Council on April 27th, 2026 at 7 p.m. To connect with the council meeting online, please use one of the following links at lakewoodspeaks.org or lakewood.org/council videos. I think we need an updated address for that. lakewoodspeaks.org or YouTube. For online public comments, you may post comments of any length to lakewoodspeaks.org. That is our online forum for public comments, and it will be left open through tonight and until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Anyone who would like to address the City Council will be given the opportunity at several times throughout this evening's festivities, depending on the topic that you are here to discuss. Will the City Clerk please start us off by calling the roll?
Mayor Strom.
Here.
Councilors LeBure.
Here.
Ryan.
Here.
Cruz K.
Here.
Black.
Here.
Sharzai.
Here.
Sinks.
Here.
Cruzai.
Here.
Lowe.
Here.
Furman.
Here.
Nystrom.
Here.
Great. Mayor, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. All right, this would be the moment that I would ask, if you are able to do so, please join us to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. After that, we'll remain standing for a moment of silent prayer or reflection. All of the members of the City Council have the responsibility to comply with the terms of Charter 7.2B and excuse themselves from voting on any matter in which they determine they have a personal, financial, or business interest. The City Council is empowered by Charter 7.2B to agree by unanimous vote, excluding the member at issue, to excuse any member of the council from voting on a matter in which they determine such member has a personal, financial, or business interest. So with our business meetings, we tend to get things kicked off with a little celebration or a little public service announcement, if you will, by having a proclamation. Tonight we actually have two proclamations on our agenda this evening. We'll start with a proclamation for Arbor Day, and then also separately one to acknowledge and say thank you for National Volunteer Month. I will meet the recipients of said proclamations up front, and Councillor Sinks will start us off by reading the Arbor Day proclamation this evening. And I understand we have a staff member here to accept Arbor Day? Yes. Yes, okay, perfect. So are you okay coming up front? Yep. All right, perfect. So I'll meet you up front.
April 24th, 2026 as Arbor Day. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife, and whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community, and whereas trees are a source of joy and spiritual renewal, and whereas Lakewood has been recognized again this year as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation and desires to continue its tree planting ways. Now, therefore, on behalf of the City Council and the people of the City of Lakewood, I, for Wendy Strom, Mayor of the City of Lakewood, Colorado, by virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby recognize April 24th, 2026 as Arbor Day.
Mayor Strom. Mayor Strom, may I introduce our city forester, Eric Shardlow.
For those of you that watched the State of the City address, was that last week? The week before? Gosh, I've slept since then. If you did not know before then, you learned in that city address that volunteerism is incredibly important to the way that I work and the way that I think we all function as a thriving community. And so I personally will read the National Volunteer Month proclamation. And we do have some volunteers that are here willing and ready to accept it. So before we get started reading, I'll ask everybody to come forward. All of our volunteers. You guys are amazing. And not everyone realizes how many ways that someone can volunteer across our city. While we're waiting, because for those of you that are not in the room and watching online, we still have volunteers coming up front. I would love to hear a few. I see we've got Lakewood Police Department volunteers. Thank you. What else? Sustainable Neighborhood volunteers. Thank you. The Volunteers of America. What else do we have? City Clerk's Office, the most exciting one here. And you said one?
Wildlife for the parks.
For the parks, yes. So many different opportunities to get involved across our city. And when we all show up and we get involved, we help our neighborhoods be stronger and thrive, and we also help our city be stronger and thrive. So I will go ahead and read this proclamation, then we're gonna try to figure out a way to take a picture. So luckily that's not my job to figure out. Whereas National Volunteer Month provides an opportunity to recognize and celebrate individuals who generously give their time, skills, and compassion to strengthen and improve their communities. And whereas government alone cannot meet all the needs of our community, and the city of Lakewood is enriched through partnerships with businesses, faith-based organizations, nonprofit organizations, foundations, and individual volunteers who step forward in service to others. And whereas in the past year, over 1,000 volunteers, many of you are right here, dedicated their time and talents in service to the city of Lakewood, contributing more than 38,000 hours in support of city programs, services, and events. And whereas the value of these volunteer hours is estimated at $1.525 million, reflecting not only a significant economic contribution, but also an immeasurable investment in community well-being, connection, and care. And whereas the City of Lakewood volunteers serve in a wide range of roles, including victim advocates with the police department, performance assistants at Lakewood Cultural Center, youth sports coaches, and supporters of city-level events such as Cider Days and Big Belmar Bash. And whereas volunteers also share their time and expertise in the museum store and as tour guides at the Heritage Lakewood, work behind the scenes in museum collections, and served as campground hosts and park patrols at Bear Creek Lake Park, helping preserve and protect the spaces that bring our community together. And whereas beyond formal city volunteer programs, countless of Lakewood residents, including those who serve on a one-time, occasional, or informal basis, give their time in often unseen ways to support neighbors, schools, community groups, faith communities, local causes, and through these acts of service, help foster a culture of generosity, resilience, and care throughout the city. And whereas the City of Lakewood deeply values the dedication, generosity, and spirit of service demonstrated by its volunteers and encourages all residents to become aware of, engaged in, and connected to their communities, neighborhoods, and local government. And now, therefore, on behalf of the City Council and the people of the City of Lakewood, I, Wendy Strom, Mayor of the City of Lakewood, Colorado, by virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby recognize and honor all volunteers in the City of Lakewood for their selfless service, commitment, and meaningful contribution that make our city stronger, more connected, and a more compassionate community. Thank you. And for everyone here in the room or not here in the room, one announcement that we made during the State of the City address is that we have a new way to get involved and to be aware of what volunteer opportunities there are across the city. And that was through the introduction of Team Love Lakewood. And Team Love Lakewood is an opportunity. It will be an email that lands in inboxes once a quarter that shares what the different opportunities are to give to our community, whether it be through some of our city events, maybe it be through council member-led initiatives, you name it. Some of our nonprofit partners are also likely to be in there as well. So for anyone watching tonight's meeting, I would encourage you. Ben, do we know what the website is to get Team Love Lakewood?
It's just /Love Lakewood.
Love Lakewood, lakewoodco.gov/Team Love Lakewood. Or just Google. All right, let's try to take a picture. Who wants their proclamation? Let's see, how do we, maybe Kathy, I get in the middle?
Yes.
You?
And right in the middle. Between Kathy and Maddie.
There we go.
Yeah. Let's see. There she is.
Okay.
Mayor Strom. We also have a brief video celebrating the volunteers and thanking them. Yeah.
Thank you to staff who put that amazing video together and let everybody know to come tonight. That was really special. Thank you. All right. With that, I actually do not have anyone here signed up to speak for initial public comment tonight, so that takes us to our next agenda item this evening. And for that, I will hand over the floor. We've got Superintendent of Schools of Jefferson County Public Schools, Tracy Dorland, who is here to give us an update and presentation on the school district.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Strom, council members. I appreciate the opportunity to address you this evening and have a conversation to provide an update about our amazing school district here in Jefferson County. And I think that they said I can drive a little bit if I want to. Is that right? Yes. I'm Tracy Dorland. I'm the superintendent of Jeffco Public Schools. I just wrapped up my 5th year as superintendent, and so I'm proud to be serving in this role and providing some leadership stability for our school district. And I'm also proud to serve alongside our elected Board of Education, who you can see here on this slide. Mr. Gibbons is the Lakewood representative on our school board, and he sends his regrets for not being able to be here this evening. He had an important work commitment that is taking up his time this evening and a large part of this week. But he wanted me to say hello to all of you and just express his regrets for not being able to be here tonight. So tonight I want to talk a little bit about Jeffco Public Schools, the results that we're getting for Jeffco students, some funding measures that we're considering to make sure our students can count on us and have a sustainable financial future in Jeffco Public Schools. And then hopefully we'll have some time for questions and conversation as well. This slide shows you a bit about our vision and mission. We have a strategic plan that we call Jeffco Thrives. It's grounded in a vision for Jeffco Public Schools to be a thriving district where all students achieve their biggest dreams. And our mission is to provide a world-class education that helps all Jeffco students prepare for bright and successful futures locally and globally. Our 4 priority areas that we work on to achieve this vision and mission include our Learners Our Future, which is all about extraordinary student experiences and instructional excellence in our classrooms and learning areas for students. Our People Our Strength is all about our employees. Our Operations Our Foundation is about our operations and making sure we're efficient in those areas. And our Communities Our Legacy is a category of strategies that we implement to make sure that the community who cares so deeply about our schools is welcomed in strategic ways. You can see a little bit about Jeffco Public Schools on this slide. It shows our values as an organization. Those are also set alongside our mission and vision by our Board of Education. We are the 2nd largest school district in the state of Colorado, just behind Denver Public Schools. We serve approximately 75,000 students across 145 schools, and we have 14,000 employees, which make us the largest employer in the county. In the bullet points on this slide, you can see the types of schools that we offer. It's everything from elementary, middle, and high schools in the traditional sense that we all think about to our outdoor lab schools in the mountains. We have online options for families, charter schools, and a few other opportunities that are different from just the traditional experience in Jeffco. One of my proudest moments as superintendent was this spring when we cut the ribbon on the new Fletcher Miller School, which is right here in Lakewood. It is a brand new facility that has been specifically designed and built for the unique student needs that it serves. And you can see our board president, Michelle Applegate, and I here with one of our students cutting the ribbon. We also have some just photos of us, our board, and just the work that I get to do with our employees every day. That makes me happy and proud to be serving in this role. Now I want to shift and just talk a little bit about the results that we're getting for Jeffco students. By the way, this picture is a picture of the Golden High School graduation last spring. They graduated at the School of Mines in Golden. It's kind of a pretty setting for their graduation. Here's some of the results that we're really proud of related to students graduating from Jeffco. This year, we had a 94% graduation rate across our 17 neighborhood high schools. It's 8% higher than the state average, and it is the highest graduation rate Jeffco Public Schools has ever seen since they started tracking high school graduation rates, which is about 16 years ago. So we're really proud of having that high graduation rate this year. We also, in addition to not only improving graduation rates overall, we are extremely proud of increasing graduation rates across all subgroups of students. And so we have students who are learning English language learners, students with disabilities who have IEP goals, students who are experiencing poverty, and our students of color all saw an increase in their graduation rates last year as well, anywhere from 2.5% to 6.5% increases. We also have about 14,000, a little over 14,000 students enrolled in our career and technical education programs. Many people know of our Warren Tech High School with 3 campuses, one north, one central, and one south. But we also offer career and technical education programs at all of our high schools. And so through not just the Warren Tech programs, but all of our comprehensive high schools, we've been able to reach over 14,000 students and give them those career and technical education experiences. Last year, we saved $8.5 million in tuition costs, college tuition costs, by concurrently enrolling our high school students in college credit-bearing courses while they're taking those classes in our high school campuses. And so therefore, kids graduate with a little bit of college credit in their pocket, saving families those tuition dollars. And the class of 2025 earned $15.3 million in college scholarships. Something else we're very proud of in Jeffco. We're hoping class of 2026 beats them. And so this is what it looks like to prepare students for bright and successful futures, all the way from elementary to the middle years and in high school. At the elementary level, we have been working on strong foundations, making sure we have strong, high-quality instructional materials, enriching our curriculum and instruction. In middle school, we focus on making sure our students, while they're gaining their independence and figuring out who they are as an individual, we want to create places where they belong and they know that they have a safe space to explore their passions and interests. And in high school, we're preparing them for bright and successful futures and really expanding in high school opportunities for students to explore careers. We're proud at the elementary level of the implementation of strong curriculum and quality instructional materials in both reading and math in every school, in every grade level. And some of the results that we're seeing this year alone, right now at mid-year, from this school year, 63% of kindergarten through 3rd grade students are reading at grade level or above, which is up from 39% at the beginning of the school year. And about 67% of our K through 3rd grade students are scoring at benchmark level or above on phonics and reading fluency, which is compared to 55% nationally. So really proud of the work that we're doing at that early elementary stage, getting all of our students reading by 3rd grade. At middle school, we are really preparing our students to be self-aware, well-rounded, and future-ready. We have procedural strategies where we are bringing our 5th graders in to show them a shadow day and get them ready for that big jump to 6th grade. We are expanding clubs and activities to allow our middle schoolers to explore the more social aspects of their developmental stage. And of course, we are constantly and always focusing on the academics, helping them really take ownership of their learning and learn how to set goals for themselves as independent learners in middle school. We did learn from our friends at Children's Hospital recently, as we were doing work with our middle school principals, that a child's brain during the middle years changes as much as birth to 5 years old. And so we really need to understand the adolescent experience that our middle schoolers are having, meet them where they are, and provide these opportunities for them to explore their independence and their passions. In high school, we are reimagining the experience so that our students walk across that graduation stage and leave us prepared for life after graduation. And that might mean college, It might mean workforce, it might mean military, it might mean a 2-year community college experience. Whatever it is they want to do next, we want them prepared. It is interesting to note that the estimate is in the next decade, we will see approximately 65% of Generation Alpha, which are individuals born between 2010 and 2024, working in jobs that don't exist today. Like no time in my career, and it's been a pretty long career, have I been faced with educating students and not really knowing what the future they're going to inherit looks like. And so we are really focused on how do we prepare them with durable skills. A resume as they leave us that represents proficiency both in the core content areas like English language arts, science, social studies, math, but also durable skills. Those skills that span across whatever they go do. Collaboration with others, teamwork, ability to write and communicate. And how does that show up on a resume that they can go to an employer and say, I know how to do these things because I've had these career experiences in high school. We're expanding, as I mentioned before, access to college credits and industry certifications, and we're making sure that they leave us having thought about what's my next step. Not just graduation, but once I get that diploma, what do I want to do next with my life? And so we're beginning a conversation in Jeffco Public Schools about funding that Jeffco kids can count on. I believe that our school district is one of our community's greatest shared investments. It is built on high standards, proven results, and deep pride in our students' success. So let's talk for just a second about how schools are funded. The state legislature sets a total funding for each school district each year on like a per pupil amount. And you can think about our funding at the school district, across all school districts in the state, as a pitcher. The overall amount is set by the state, but it is filled with both local tax revenue and state tax revenue. The local share is a fixed tax rate that's set by the state of Colorado and applied to all taxpayers at 27 mils. The state share is funding from the state income tax and sales tax that's allocated by the legislature. Our total program is both the green and blue portions, right? It's the local share of the 27 mils, as well as whatever the state backfills to get us to whatever the formula says we should get on our per pupil. One of the common myths and confusions in our community is that when my property taxes go up, the school district gets more money. That is not true. And I can't tell you how many barbecues I've been at where people say, what are you doing with all that extra money now that my property taxes went up? The answer is we don't get more money as a school district. We get the same amount that's set by the state. When local property taxes go up, if the green portion goes up, the blue portion goes down. The state just backfills less. And I think that's a really important concept and understanding for our community members and taxpayers to have. In addition to both the local funding and the state share, we also have what are called mill levy overrides, where local communities can ask their taxpayers to go above and beyond the total program. And we have done this in Jeffco a couple of times. Back in the day, like 1998, 2004, we also had a recent mill levy override that was successful in 2018. And it is still true that we are well behind our neighboring school districts in the amount of money we are investing per student in Jeffco. You can see on this graphic, our total program is in the green, which is the money that is the combined state share and local share of 27 mils. The blue portion is the general purpose mill levy overrides, the amount of money we have gone and asked our voters for in the history of Jeffco to provide above and beyond the total program. And then you'll see a light blue, which is a special purpose levy. It is an additional opportunity to raise taxes by local school districts for the purpose of investment in capital construction, technology, and maintenance. The state of Colorado does not give us funds for capital construction, technology, and maintenance. And so you can see one glaring aha from this slide is that we have never passed a special purpose mill levy override for capital construction, technology, and maintenance in Jeffco. We have passed general obligation bonds and taken out debt service. but we have never passed a special purpose mill, which is money that comes in annually to support capital. Other districts have. In addition, other districts who have passed general purpose mill levy overrides have tied those mill levy overrides to inflation. And so year over year, they're growing with the economy. In Jeffco Public Schools, we have only tied the 2018 mill levy override to inflation. All other mill levy overrides are flat and have not increased with inflation. This has just provided a lot of pressure and on us to keep up with our neighbors. About 85 to 90% of school district budgets are in staffing, right? Salaries and benefits for employees. And so you can see when another school district has $2,000 to $4,000 more per pupil, we have a very difficult time maintaining competitive salaries and competitive programming for our students. And that is what this slide represents. I will just say to you as an aside that $1,277 per student that Denver raises in their special purpose mill levy raises approximately $100 million for Denver Public Schools to invest in their facilities, capital construction, technology, and maintenance. That's money we don't have. We are instead annually transferring $15 to $30 million out of our green portion, or general purpose, or our total program for capital construction, technology, and maintenance. So it's just a real pressure and a difficult situation that Jeffco finds us ourselves in. And the bottom line, our current resources are not enough, but we are working really, really hard to also accept the reality that we need to live within our means. And part of that this year, you may have heard, has been a budget reduction blueprint that we've been implementing, where we have reduced our expenditures for next year by $40 million. And that's helping, but it's still not fixing the entire problem. The other thing I want to address is people say you closed schools. Haven't you saved money by doing that? Yes, we have. We've closed 21 schools. It was the most difficult work that the most difficult work that I've done as a district leader and educator. And we are saving $20 million annually from the closure of those schools. Our financial pressures and burdens would be heavier had we not done that work. The third thing I want to address that's not on this slide, but it is important for you all to know, and I think you're probably familiar, after we closed those schools, we started a property disposition process. And so we are selling those properties, and we are putting any revenue from the sale of those properties directly into our capital accounts so that we can reinvest those dollars back into the schools that we're operating to keep them warm, safe, dry, and modern for the students who are going to school and staff who are in those buildings every day. Here's what we're thinking about doing about it. We have a partnership for fiscal sustainability that is a community group of about 80 to 100 participants that have been coming together over the course of this semester to discuss options for a ballot measure. You can see those options down the left-hand side of this slide. The first one is a $75 million general purpose mill levy override. It would actually maximize the amount of money we can collect from our taxpayers and the net cost to taxpayers, you can see there is approximately $1.21 a month per $100,000 of actual home value. What's covered, I'm now going to the right on this slide. It would provide sustained funding for identified uses like programming for students and compensation for staff. It would not cover annual capital needs. And we would prioritize staff compensation and programming related to career tech ed for students. It would be ongoing. The second package that the partnership is exploring is a $135 million package, which does everything that I just talked about. It raises the $75 million in general purpose, and it also adds that light blue portion that you saw on the previous slide, where it provides for special purpose mill levy funds to support capital. And it would cost about $3.58 per month per 100,000. It would provide both money for programming and compensation, as well as capital construction, technology and maintenance needs. And the final option, which would also cover the same things, it just wouldn't be ongoing related to the capital, is a general purpose mill levy override and a bond, which would be debt service and a one-time lump sum instead of ongoing regular annual mill levy override funds that are coming in for capital. So The board is going to be receiving a presentation about this from the partnership. They will be recommending one of these options to the Board of Education in May. If a ballot measure passes, what happens? What's the benefit? I'm going to highlight a couple of these things. There are many benefits for our students. First and foremost, we keep great educators in Jeffco classrooms. When we take care of our employees, they stay. And we want veteran, experienced teachers in front of our students every day. It also allows students to benefit from stable and strong relationships from people who have been in their schools for a long time, who they get to know and who the community comes to love and trust. We also will plan responsibly for the long term. We need to figure out a fix to be more fiscally sustainable in Jeffco Public Schools, and this would allow us to do that. And finally, we do care deeply about providing warm, safe, and modern learning facilities. Even though we've had to close some schools, many of our schools are aging facilities, and they need to be replaced. So it is not about an expanding footprint in Jeffco Public Schools because our enrollment is declining, but it is about making sure that our older facilities over time can be replaced and provide for a modern learning experience for students. Here's the timeline. You can see I said in May, let's see, the board will be considering the partnership's recommendation in May and then studying some things over the summer, and by August of 2026, they will take formal action to consider approval of a ballot question, and that needs to be approximately 60 days prior to the election. Here's information about the partnership. If anybody who's listening or anybody who's here this evening would like to join us, we meet on a regular basis. We're kind of winding down and getting ready for the recommendation to the board, but you're always welcome to check out this website, see what's going on, educate yourself, and or join us for our next meeting. And here's other ways to stay connected to Jeffco Public Schools. We have community updates and across-the-board newsletters, our Board of Education meetings always, and our social media accounts, which are always fun because we like to highlight students and the amazing work of our educators in our buildings. So we also have an Elevate Education podcast if you've ever liked to listen to a podcast. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate the time this evening.
Thank you very much for bringing that to us.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll move on to this evening's consent agenda. Oh, Mayor Pro Tem, your hand was up.
Sorry, just a quick question. Thank you so much. Appreciate this. I have students in Jeffco schools. I've got a kid that graduated, and really just appreciate all the hard work that goes in, particularly with the educators and school administrators. Can you talk a little bit about the budget right sizing that you've already had to do? So I understand you're looking at revenue generating, but you have had to make $40 million in reductions to get to a balanced budget now. Where will we see that impact? Is it in the, help us understand that.
Yeah, thank you for that question. We, when our Board of Education adopted its budget last June, it was a deficit budget. And by statute, boards of education, when adopting a deficit budget, also need to adopt a plan for fixing the deficit, right, and getting it back into balance. And so our Board of Education passed a resolution asking us to implement a plan that would fix the deficit, close the deficit by about the budget expenditures, I would say, by about $45 million going into this next coming fiscal year. We've gotten to 40, and I feel like we've done a really good job, and we'll be presenting the proposed budget for next year to the Board of Education next week, and it will represent $40 million. We didn't quite get to 45, but it's going to represent $40 million. The other thing the board asked us to do was to keep it as far away as possible from the classroom. And because of the large amount of deficit that we're spending, it was impossible for us to completely keep it away from schools. That would have been our goal, but it's just such a large amount that we really needed to be thoughtful about how do we keep the largest percentage of reductions away from the classroom. We just couldn't keep them all away. So what we did was we basically took, we're about $1 billion, and we basically took the budgets that were furthest away from the classrooms at the central office level and department budgets, and the ones that were, it's also just kind of a misnomer that department budgets don't go to schools. We have many, many expenditures in our department budgets. About 75% of our department budgets are resources in schools. So you can't just say, cut from this department budget and it won't impact kids. There's not a whole lot that we do and invest in Jeffco Public Schools that isn't worthwhile, right? And we cover 800 square miles. We manage $1 billion budget. We manage 14,000 employees. There are also essential operations that are critical, mission critical for our students to have safe learning experiences, consistent learning experiences. And so we basically took the department budgets that were the least impactful to schools and gave them the largest reduction targets and our schools the smallest reduction targets. And it has impacted our schools. And it has not been, it has been very, very difficult for our department leaders and for our school leaders to work with their school communities to make decisions about how to meet the reduction targets. And so yeah, it looks a little bit different in every school because the school leaders worked with their school accountability committees and their leadership teams, their staff leadership teams, to come together and say, if we have a 2% or a 3% reduction target, what are we going to do to meet our target? And then department leaders did as well. You know, I will tell you, oftentimes it is, and we are not the only district who is dealing with this kind of belief and assessment of how we invest funds. Many times people will say that we are investing too much money at the central office, right? That there's this central office, general administration bloat. In Jeffco Public Schools, our general administration is approximately 4.5% of our overall budget. They're getting the details for me, but I will just tell you from working in other school districts and knowing other school districts are not that low. They're probably 6 to 8, maybe 9%. A 4.5% operating budget, general administration, it's not just operating funds, it also includes staffing, is very lean in a $1 billion organization. And so we're working on ways to help our community understand that. And yeah, it's been a very difficult spring when the departments conducted their reductions by December, and then this spring is when the schools worked on theirs. I will also just publicly say I am incredibly proud of the leaders in Jefferson County Public Schools who have had to go to their communities and or their department teams and say we've got to work on this together. And they've done the hard work of reducing the $40 million in expenditures to try to get us at least a little bit closer to a balanced budget. Thank you for the question.
Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, and thank you so much, Ms. Dorland, for the really, really informative presentation. We appreciate it. I just didn't want to let the moment pass, since we don't get you up here all that every month anyway, to say thank you, and genuinely, we thank you so much to you and your team and the board for the partnership we worked with over a 2+ year period on the school disposition process for Vivian and Emory Elementary. We really strongly feel it was a win-win for Jeffco Schools and Lakewood, and we're really enthusiastic about the park and the community work that's happening on those two sites. So thank you for the partnership. We're really excited about what's going to come for the neighborhoods from those two properties. So a little bit of good news in the tough belt tightening conversation.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We are very proud of the partnership and the work that we've done with you all and with city staff. So City Manager Hodson and I are very proud of that work. Yes, we are. And I think I agree, win-win for our communities.
Councillor Sinks.
Thank you. And to just celebrate the kids again, 94% graduation rate. Phenomenal. That's awesome. Yeah, just great work. Thank you for the presentation. Just generally, I wonder if you could tell us of that 94%, like how many go maybe to Red Rocks or another four-year school or industry certifications. Do you have just a general idea that you could give us on that?
I wish I did. Council members thinks I do not have that off the top of my head, and I didn't bring it with me this evening. I do know that we track some of our post-secondary work, but it is an effort at the state level to do more of that tracking and monitoring, and understanding when kids go to a 2-year, a 4-year, a military, or into workforce, how are they doing 3 years later, 4 years later? It's work that the state is doing right now, and I just don't have the data with me, but we'd be happy to follow up.
Thank you. I'm just curious on that. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, that is all our questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda for this evening. Do we have any items requested to be pulled from this evening's consent agenda? Councillor Sinks.
Yes, Mayor, I would like to pull item 5H from the consent agenda.
Any others? Okay, seeing none. Will the clerk please read our amended consent agenda into the record?
Thank you, Mayor. The consent agenda is comprised of the following items. 5A, R 2026-27, approving the appointment of Lou Scalmanini to the Board of Directors for the Alameda Corridor Business Improvement District. R 2026-28, appointing members of the Ad Hoc Advisory Committee to work towards the establishment of a permanent police community oversight committee, R 2026-29, approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District, DBA Mile High Flood District, the City and County of Denver, and the City of Aurora for wet weather monitoring and other stormwater quality permit activities. R 2026-30, approving an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Lakewood and the City of Edgewater for preventative maintenance, mill and overlay services. R 2026-31, approving an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Lakewood and the City of Wheat Ridge, for preventative maintenance, mill and overlay services. R 2026-32, establishing a fee for the mapping amendment process under the City of Lakewood Wildfire Resiliency Code. R 2026-33, approving Lakewood's participation in the National Opioids 6 Remnant Defendants Settlement and waiver of all claims against such opioids, plural, remnant defendants. 6A, O 2026-17, setting the salaries of municipal court judges. 6B, O 2026-18, authorizing supplemental appropriations to the 2026 revised annual budget in the amount of $3 million from Jefferson County. Item 7, approving minutes of the City Council meetings, special meeting minutes from April 6, 2026, regular meeting minutes from April 13, 2026.
Thank you. You can take a breath now. Okay, and I have one signed up for public comment on consent agenda, so we'll go ahead and open public comment up first. And Natalie Menton, the floor is yours.
I may have signed up on the wrong. I want to do the public policy, the council policy. Is that what they're?
Policies and procedures just got pulled, so we'll circle back to you. Okay, with that being said, then we have no public comment on this evening's consent agenda. May I please have a motion?
Mayor Strom, I move for the approval of the City Council minutes, order all ordinances introduced on first reading to be published in the Denver Post with public hearing set for the date included in the ordinance, and for adoption of resolutions, all of which are included in the consent agenda items introduced in the record by the city clerk.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any council questions or discussion? Seeing none, please go ahead and cast your vote. All right, and that passes 11 yeses and 0 noes. Then we will move to item 5H. Will the clerk please read 5H into the record?
Item 5H, R 2026-34, adopting the 2026 revised City Council Policies and Procedures Manual.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll go ahead and open public comment on this. So Ms. Menton, if you want to come forward, the floor is yours. You'll give us your name and address, your name and ward, and we'll get your clock started.
Thank you, Natalie Menton, Ward 5. There are a few provisions within this policy and the revisions, and even prior to the revisions, that have raised some questions for myself that I would like to figure out if I can get better understanding. And they deal in the public participation to start with. It came to my attention, well, say last fall, when I noticed this limited public forum document that sits up here by the sign-in area. And I am not clear on what that means and where it really came from. It seemed to be within the document that was revised in 2024, and I'm unable to get to the recordings of some of those study sessions for that committee. But when I look at the definition of limited forum, it's limited. So it doesn't seem to fit within where I've read elsewhere about the different options, classifications that could be used for a forum such as a public comment period. So I pulled up this Colorado Municipal League 40, 50-page document that talks about the law of civility. And where it talks there, it's really labeling 3 types of forums that could be present within a body such as this. The first would be a traditional public forum. Then there's a designated public forum. And then third, which is a very more limited, would be the limited public forum. So the way I'm reading through CML's document, which was also an attorney for CIRSA that was involved in creating this presentation, it seems to define something such as this meeting, this body we're in right now here in this moment, as a traditional public forum, or at worst, second choice, a designated public forum, but not a limited public forum. So what is that notice supposed to mean? And that raises another question as to accompanying that limited forum document was notice of no campaigning, basically. And I'm wondering, where is the difference? What if, for instance, a school board was up here talking about a tax increase, but a member of the public during public comment wanted to comment about a tax increase? What would be those 2 different things? Secondly, what is the addition of the personal comment thing within the public policy that's now there for council members? What is the purpose of that personal statements to be used for? It seems to be there's some differences here between what is the public allowed to do, and for that matter, if the public were to speak out and violate limited, what would occur? Would they be ejected? What would be the instance? So I'd like to get some answers on these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others signed up for or would like to speak on item 5H? Nope. Okay. Councillor Sinks?
Yes, thank you. I asked this to be pulled because I have some amendments to add, especially to section 6.1 Code of Conduct. And I asked Clerk Rob, sent it to him earlier, if you're able to show that to everyone, show it on the screen. And while he's doing that, I might say that, yes, Colorado Municipal League had quite a push, a whole edition of their magazine devoted to rules of civility. And I like to emphasize them at our ward meeting. And I thought it would also be appropriate here. I think we have a wonderful council that shows respect all the time for each other, and I really appreciate that. However, I do think that it's wonderful to kind of put this in our policy for who knows what could happen down the road in the future. And so as he's calling that up, I'd like you to pay special attention to those things in blue, which again came from rules of civility, and there it is. And so if we look at the first blue, listen for understanding, as we all should do. And then I like the last sentence, when disagreements occur, seek common ground. And, you know, that couldn't be misconstrued. It could be that, oh, I have to compromise. But seeking common ground isn't really about compromising, but it's really about going to the bottom, ground zero, to see, hey, where can we all meet? We're all humans. We want to live at ease and be happy and healthy. That's certainly a common ground. We want to live in a great city. That's certainly common ground. I think it's very important as our society and, of course, our city is very polarized. I think this is a very good strategy to seek common ground, and we can do that with loved ones, you know, et cetera. So I do like that part. And you can just, I have already shared this with council, and if you want to just take some time to read that second bullet, and then also if you could go up or down or whatever. Yeah, additional provisions concerning city council meetings. And so this first bullet, we talked about that at our retreat, and how handy it is to submit in writing before the meeting any recommended amendment. And so I tried to practice that as I shared this with council a couple of different times. And also, it's very handy. You know, I'm also from an education background, and it's also very important if people can read it as well and not just hear it. And so this also says it'd be great to share it with the city clerk too. So those are the additions to 6.1 that I would like to suggest.
Okay. Let's go ahead and make a motion and a second to get this started off. Yeah, I think.
Mr. Mayor, I move for the adoption of Resolution 2026-34.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any council questions, debate, discussion? Oh, yeah. So we need to actually, let me back up just a little bit. Let's do council. Do we have any discussion that is not, well, you already did your amendment, so never mind. Let's stick to the amendment. Councilor Ryan, your hand was up. Was it related to the amendment? Okay, thank you.
No, it was just that clarification.
Oh, okay. Do we have any comments about the amendment? So why don't you make a formal motion for your amendment, and then we'll vote on that.
Thank you. I move that we accept the items on 6.1 that are before us, that have been emailed out and on the screen, to add to our code of conduct.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Councilor Cruz.
Thank you. I just wanted to express appreciation for Councilor Sinks for working on this alternative. I know this was something we had a lot of conversation about at our study session, and appreciate the work to incorporate this in a section that I think meets a good compromise. So I think it was a great example of the work in action.
No other hands up? We're ready to go ahead and vote? All right, please go ahead and cast your vote. Clarification, the first vote is on the amendment, not the resolution. And that passes 11 yeses and 0 noes. Any additional debate or discussion on the resolution itself? Councilor Ryan, then Councilor Lowe.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just wondering if someone from staff might be able to address the last public comment, specifically with respect to the differences between the limited public forum and the issue about the campaigning.
Yes, that question took two separate issues and combined them into one. So that's actually two different issues. The first is under the city's campaign finance law, individuals, including the city, during a ballot season, during an election season, may not comment on matters that are pending on a ballot and may not come forward and basically electioneer, state that this is a party you should vote for, this is a ballot issue you should vote for. Once the city council puts a matter on the ballot, then you'll notice the city goes radio silent on that issue. And it doesn't matter why the city took the action that it did in, for example, in passing the zoning code. The city is not allowed to educate or discuss that. And the city doesn't use its dollars to create an open area for anybody else to come forward in election year either, because those would be use of the city's dollars. So that's the electioneering issue. The second issue is I think she's asking for an explanation of what the First Amendment requires. So the First Amendment has been interpreted by the Supreme Court and by the 10th Circuit and by other courts to allow for time, place, and manner restrictions. City meetings have been identified as limited public forums because city meetings are not a place for people to come forward and say whatever they want to say. It's a place for the business of the city to be completed. And the courts have recognized that in order to complete the business of the city, there has to be limitations. One of the things that cities are encouraged to do, honestly, we started seeing the encouragement coming out about 2015, is to start letting people know when you walk into a city meeting what the restrictions are going to be. So, for example, if someone wanted to come in and use the city meeting to have some kind of protest about an issue that's important to them but is not on the city's agenda, that would be in violation of the city's forum. The city's forum is a limited public forum, meaning we only discuss the matters on the agenda. The other thing is there have been several terms used by the courts over time, but basically there's a traditional or open public forum, and that's what you see out on sidewalks. But in the places that people have historically had the right to state whatever they want to state about their opinions on what's happening in the public. Then you have limited public forums, which are places like inside public buildings that are established to allow for the business of the city to take place, and city council meetings, that type of thing. You also have closed public forums. So those are the three types. And a closed public forum would be like within city offices. So if someone wanted to just show up and wander randomly through city offices, you can't do that because where the doors are shut, those are closed public forums. And again, we've been trying to post that information so that the public is not taken unaware that this is what the rules are within this city.
So just to clarify that last point, the fact that these policies and procedures refer to a limited public forum doesn't change the public accessibility that we currently allow the public to enjoy.
No, it's just putting people on notice that a city meeting and many of the spaces within the city hall are limited public forums, meaning that their primary purpose is to provide for the business of the city.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Lowe.
Councillor Ryan already asked my question, so I have no question.
Okay, Councillor Ike Cruz.
Thank you. I was going to ask that question too. But the other thing I just wanted to maybe speak to, since we got a couple of questions about it, I know on Lakewood Speaks and in public comment, was related to the addition of the personal declaration. Just so if anybody follows maybe other city council bodies, you'll notice that folks on the dais tend to use it both to push forth actual policies, such as the resolutions and ordinances you see us use, but then also some folks might use it as more of a communications tool, right? You'll see resolutions supporting a federal piece of legislation that we don't have a say on, right? But somebody else might want to speak to, or an issue, or like some of the proclamations. And so this was an attempt by council to kind of work with staff to figure out how, if members of this body should choose to use sort of the communications aspect of the role of being a city councilor, or the role of being an elected official, how we would want to do that in a way that doesn't sort of confuse the resolution and ordinance process. So that is sort of what we're working with that declarations process, and I think it's gonna be new, so we look forward to your feedback on it. We already did one declaration that Councillor K. Cruz and Councillor Black led on regarding ICE, and so we will see how that is used moving forward, but just wanted to make sure everybody was kind of aware of why we were implementing this new process.
Okay, I have no additional hands up, so we do have a motion on the floor and a second. So with that, we will move forward. At this point, go ahead and cast your vote, and this is for the amendment, the resolution as amended. All right, and that passes 11 yeses and 0 noes. Okay, moving on to second reading ordinances for the evening. Will the clerk please read item 9A to the record?
Item 9A, O 2026-13, second reading and public hearing, amending Lakewood Municipal Code 3.26, update definitions and clarify the types of public benefits that may be supported through the Economic Development Fund.
Okay, thank you very much. And for this, we do have a presentation this evening from staff. And we'll be hearing from Will Chen, our Economic Development Director.
Thank you so much, Mayor Strom and members of council. Good evening. My name is Will Chen. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the City of Lakewood. I'm just going to run through and try to be as brief as possible with some of the proposed changes to Chapter 3.26 of the Lakewood Municipal Code. So just providing some context, this fund, the Economic Development Fund, has been a resource in economic development since 1985. It's been a resource that we have been able to use and utilize for the promotion of businesses and economic vitality for the city of Lakewood. It was approved in 1987, funded through lodging tax, through a voter-approved measure, and that has been what has sustained this fund moving forward. What we're doing today is not creating a new tax, we're not creating a new program. What we're doing is really modifying and updating the language to reflect the current needs of our communities and what economic development means today and what is effective. We're going to clarify what the definitions are for economic development and how to align those with our economic priorities for the city. We're going to add a definition for what economic mobility is, emphasizing some key priorities that are reflected in that definition. And we want to make sure that this is a fund that is going to be inclusive for the city as a whole and how it is used, and clarify what those uses could be. And then reinforce what is already approved by City Council and continue that work. Walking through the summary right now, very high level, all of these things included together are really meant to update the language to reflect the needs of our residents. 3.26.10, the purpose was a rewrite to add economic mobility to the definition, add some legal justification. What was there before was just broad legal justification of how we could use the fund. This narrows it down, makes it more focused of how we can use it and for what purposes we can use this fund for. With the definitions, we have added economic mobility. Economic mobility for effective economic development is just linking together workforce development, education, good job placements to really create pathways to move outside of, create ladders outside of, to move people outside of poverty. It also creates an added benefit to increase our consumer base and provides greater resources for our residents. For the fund in 3.26.030 for the fund, we've simplified this. What was provided before in the previous code was a prescriptive list of needs that we could apply these funds for. What we have brought in is to make this a bigger, broader public benefit and simplify that language a little bit further. With 3.26.040, with the expenditures, we've restructured that. So again, with the addition of economic mobility, we've also added greater provisions and oversight for how we are providing incentives for property and broadening the definition. So we're removing job training and tourism, which is provided in other assets of the city and our community, and really focusing on those two pieces. Within the procedures, we updated that language, again, to provide more clarity and more structure and more accountability for how we provide those rebates. So adding more metrics and deliverables for how we are providing that, how we're providing fee waivers, how we're providing incentives. With the land purchase, that is staying the same within ordinance, and council will have approval for those pieces that come forward. And finally, a minor update for 3.26.060 for the criteria, just reflecting the language that extending the privileges of the city manager for any approvals that that individual can also extend approval to a designee as well. That's pretty much it. I welcome any questions and have, yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Sharzai.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chan. Appreciate the presentation. Really excited that we're modernizing this a little bit and thinking more broadly towards economic mobility and not just sort of the enumerated list that we had. I have two questions about 3.26.050. I wanted to better understand, like, what are the frequency in which we'll review the performance metrics, and what happened? My second question is, what happens if they're not meeting it? Like, what would those penalties sort of look like?
So we're creating those regulations within the office right now. And so we will have a percent, it'll just be more transparent of how we are creating those incentive packages. So what are those metrics that they're going to be tied to? What are the constraints for those incentives? And what is the approval process that we will present to council and city manager? So we're still working through it.
So to clarify, we'll see that come back when we're approving this, like each performance metric
Yes.
will sort of be built out in that package?
Yes.
Okay, great. One more question, if I may, about 3.26.040I. You've heard from me a lot about procurement with women and minority-owned businesses, and I guess I would love to understand how does this help to advance that council priority that we've talked about in our procurement policies and procedures that help support elevating women and minority-owned businesses? I know it talks about business finance education, but there's oftentimes, we just, as a screening committee, for example, reviewed bids that were easily accessible, I think, to folks that maybe would have contract opportunities with the city that wouldn't in normal circumstances, and we'd just like to understand, is this meant to help elevate that as well?
I think with the definition of economic mobility, we can support minority businesses, we can provide that technical assistance, we can provide those supports as minority women businesses, but also LGBTQ-owned businesses, veteran businesses. So broadening that to provide those supports more holistically as they're needed and to be able to adapt to those communities as they come forth. So it might not address procurement directly, but it does provide those technical assistance.
No other hands? No other hands?
Easy peasy, thank you.
Okay, one more hand. Councilor Ryan.
Thank you. I just want to clarify for myself, this is separate and apart from the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority, correct?
This is separate.
Okay. And under the new procedures, well, under the existing procedures before they would get revised, the economic development monies come before city council, correct?
Yes.
And under the revised, under the proposed language, that process would still continue, right? That would still come back to city council for approval or not, I suspect.
That's correct. We will still come forth with approval for council for land purchases. We'll now have to have an ordinance. Also, any incentive packages, anytime we were spending money from this fund, we will also present to council for approval.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe.
I just wanted to say, I think the addition of the, making economic mobility a formal definition, adding it to this ordinance is a great addition. Thank you. This is a generally good update, and was especially excited to see that sort of made more explicit. So kudos, and this seems well aligned with our larger strategic goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lowe.
You can sit now.
Thank you, Mayor Strong.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. With that, I will go ahead and open the public hearing. I do not have anyone that is signed up here to speak on this topic. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this topic? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and may I please have a motion?
Mayor, I move for the adoption of ordinance O-2026-13 on second and final reading.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any other discussion or debate? Councilor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor. So the one criticism I heard from, and we've seen on Lakewood Speaks about the opposition to this language, is that somehow the city council is giving away its power or authority. And I'm comfortable, based on the language that I've read and the answers that we just heard, that that's not the case. The process is still going to continue, where the ultimate decision is going to have to come back to the city council. And so, to the extent folks were concerned, I don't believe those concerns are at issue, at least at this point. So I will be voting yes.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Ryan. And I have no more hands up, so please go ahead and cast your vote. And that passes 11 yeses and 0 nos. Will the clerk please read item 9B into the record?
Item 9B, second reading and public hearing on O-2026-14, adopting Title 14, Chapter 31 of the Lakewood Municipal Code, establishing the City of Lakewood Wildfire Resiliency Code and corresponding wildland-urban interface boundary map.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, we do not have a presentation on this tonight, but we do have staff that is here and available to answer questions. Before we put a motion out there and open the public hearing, council, do we have any questions before we get started? Okay, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing first. And I do have one speaker signed up to speak as pooled time, and Karen Gourday. Need to confirm that we have others in the audience. We need 4 people to do pooled time. So first I have John Froge. Okay, thank you. Karen Miller. Okay, thank you. And Mary Jansen. All right. We are set and good to go. So if you'll just give us your name and address, or your name and ward, and we'll get your 10 minutes started.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Karen Gourday, and I live in Ward 5. I want to start by acknowledging something important. Wildfire risk is real. Mitigation matters. And no one here is arguing against reasonable, targeted steps to protect life and property. But what is being proposed tonight goes beyond that, and let me be clear, I am not calling for a referendum. That said, this ordinance adopts a wildfire resilience code that applies broadly against designated areas of the city, and it introduces ongoing obligations for homeowners that are not clearly being communicated as such. I want to walk through 3 key issues: scope, application to existing homes, and practical impact. The ordinance itself states that the city chose to exceed state minimum requirements and expand the mapped WUI areas. For the second time in a year, we are choosing to exceed the state requirements. That is a policy choice. And with that choice becomes a responsibility to clearly communicate what that means for residents. This is not just about new construction in high-risk foothill zones. This includes interior areas of Lakewood that are already developed and built out, and in many cases not traditionally understood by homeowners to fall within wildfire interface risk. In fact, under the state map issued by the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code Board, only the western portion of Ward 4 is included in the WUI map. Yet, the map that's in the packet tonight, based on my research, was developed by the Jefferson County Wildfire Commission sometime between 2023 and 2025, and it includes all of Ward 4, a large portion of Ward 5, and part of Ward 1. And notably, it appears that Lakewood does not have representation on that committee. So now switching to the application of this to existing homes, there's been discussions suggesting on Lakewood Together that this code is primarily forward-looking and applies to new construction. However, this ordinance was never put on Lakewood Together, and that's not the full picture. Section 14.31.030, subsection E, explicitly states that the provisions applying to existing conditions are retroactive. So this is not a future-only code. It's designed to apply to existing homes. The same section, that's 14.31.030, subsection G, further states that vegetation, landscape materials, and defensible space must be maintained in compliance with the code, and that responsibility falls on the homeowner. So that is ongoing obligation. In addition, the code allows enforcement of conditions that are determined to be hazardous to life or property. So while the code may not use the word retroactive in a traditional sense, it clearly establishes a framework where existing homeowners can be required over time to modify vegetation, trees, shrubs, and landscaping to meet these standards. And that distinction matters. From a homeowner's perspective, that's not optional guidance, that's enforceable. And so I want to talk about something that's very common here in Colorado. And that's a hailstorm where a property owner needs to replace their roof. Under this code, that work could possibly exceed the 25% threshold and trigger compliance for the roof itself. That means upgraded materials and additional cost. And then most homeowners do not carry insurance riders that cover code upgrade requirements. And given the rising cost of everything, this could force homeowners into difficult decisions about whether they can even afford to complete necessary repairs. But the impact doesn't necessarily stop there. Because once a permit is pulled and inspections occur, then the city now has the authority to enforce defensible space requirements on the property. And that can include removal of shrubs and plantings within 5 feet of the home, pruning or modifying or even complete removal of existing trees, as has occurred in Littleton, restrictions on certain plant species, and ongoing vegetation management requirements. So what starts as an insurance-driven roof replacement can become a broader compliance issue for the entire property. And again, that may not be the intent, but that's how this code is written. And so for many homeowners, that's not hypothetical, that is a financial risk. This code includes enforcement provisions that allow for penalties and require correction of violations. Each day a condition is not corrected can constitute a separate offense. In addition, the building official has broad discretion to determine compliance and to identify conditions that present a hazard. That creates uncertainty for homeowners, not just about what is required today, but what may be required tomorrow. The concern here is not wildfire mitigation itself. The concern is the lack of clear guardrails around how this will be applied to existing homes. So questions that remain are when and how will existing properties be evaluated for compliance, whether enforcement will be compliant-driven or proactive, what level of vegetation modification will be required in practice, and what the cost burden will be for homeowners. These are not minor details, and given that we have spent the better part of the last year talking about housing affordability, these are practical realities residents will face. So good policy balances safety with feasibility, and it considers not just the goal, but the implementation. Right now, this code places significant responsibility on homeowners without clearly defining the limits on that responsibility or the pathway to compliance. Finally, I have a few direct questions for council. Will homeowners be required to bring existing landscaping and vegetation into compliance upon pulling a permit for unrelated work such as roof replacement? How will the city ensure consistent and fair enforcement across all neighborhoods? What protections exist to prevent this from becoming an open-ended obligation on homeowners? And finally, how will residents be informed in plain language about what is expected of them? Because once this goes into effect, it won't be theoretical, it will be applied. I would encourage council to consider whether the current approach appropriately separates new construction from existing homes, or whether additional time, such as a study session or continued readings, would allow for clearer guidance on how this will be applied to existing properties. At a minimum, residents deserve clear, consistent expectations before this is finalized. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and put a motion on the floor. If I could start with a motion, please.
Mayor, I move for the adoption of ordinance O-2026-14 on second and final reading.
Second.
Okay, thank you. And council will open up the floor for questions. Councilor Furman?
So inherently, I support building codes, protecting health, safety, and welfare, but I do think there is a lot of those questions that have been asked by other people, including what we heard here, and I need to understand some of those same clarifications around, for example, when a property would need to come into compliance with, and which properties would need to come in full compliance with, say, defensible space or any of the plantings, removal, that sort of thing. And I guess I need sort of a clear understanding, both whether it happens just out of the gate, or if it relates to other projects, as Ms. Gourdet was talking about, in relationship to some other project that is bringing part of the house into compliance with the code. Can you tell me when that would happen?
Yes, I'm Keith Ensel. I'm the city engineer. The code is triggered by either new construction of a building or by a substantial addition added onto the building. Depending on the magnitude of the building size would start the requirements for what happens in the yard space. There's actually two kind of zones that we refer to. One is the immediate zone, one is the intermediate zone. So in that immediate zone, that's 0 to 5 feet away from the structure, there are requirements for removing certain size bushes, trees, and that sort of thing. That's only required based on what new construction is being proposed, and that's increasing the size of the footprint or adding a new structure. There is a provision in the code, for example, that addresses roofs. If a roof is constructed or needed because of hail or something like that, that does not trigger the defensible space requirements.
Okay, that was my first question. I'll sort of let other people jump in, but that's the most critical one.
Mayor Pro Tem Sharzai.
Thank you. My question is regarding the map that the county is proposing, and the examples that you all gave in the presentation around potential costs that people would be experiencing. I was having trouble understanding because the examples were primarily about Class 1 interface perimeter, but this map goes a little bit further with that Class 1 interior class, and that didn't seem to be addressed in like the examples of what the added expense would be for homeowners. Can you help us understand what that would look like, maybe why it wasn't included?
Certainly. We chose to show the map just as Jefferson County had presented that map to us. So they included both a perimeter and interior section. Those both meet the Class 1 requirements, and Class 1 requirements are applied to those two areas equally.
So so the difference that was given in cost around perimeter, the examples that were given in the presentation, those could also be applied to the deep blue coloring on the map for the interior because they're all Class 1.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have slides to help answer some questions?
Yeah, we can pull up the map here in case.
So the area that you see in red here is what we would refer to as the Class 2 area. Both the areas in blue, the interface perimeter and the interface interior, are both the Class 1 requirements.
Thank you, that's helpful. And to the public comments question, what's the plan to educate folks on the WUI updates that are happening? So I do think these are a shift. We've seen when wildfire has wreaked havoc on other communities, and understanding that we may need to look at how we're looking at some of our urban corridors a little bit differently. What are the steps that we're going to see for community members to understand what these changes are going to look like?
So if passed, the building department will instigate a section in our E-Track-It program, which will notify us of all permits that are requested within this area. Once we see that notification, we'll be able to take a look at the scope of that work that's proposed. And if we find that it includes work that may be impacted by these requirements, we will reach out to those homeowners with a handout and additional information telling them just exactly what they need to do to comply with the requirements. One of the things that we also want to do is, because the structure hardening portion of the requirements requires some very specific analysis of material types, we want to be able to let them know. We want to be able to get that information in clearly so we can evaluate all the materials that are being proposed in any kind of construction to be able to get them good comments and good direction on where they need to go.
Okay, Councilor Sinks.
Thank you. Yes, I also wanted to refer to the map. So it's kind of hard maybe for you to see that the white is the city of Lakewood boundary. So I live in the white. And so I'm not in the wildland urban interface. So if I get a hailstorm, nothing is going to change with what I have to do based on this policy. Is that correct?
That's correct. And actually, in a hailstorm, if you're looking to replace your roof, the city of Lakewood already requires a Class A roofing material for all roofs in Lakewood. So in that respect, for that item, there would be really no change whether you were in the area or outside the area.
Okay, thank you. And why do you suppose the dark blue is where it is and the light blue and the pink? Could you just kind of go through that description of how it might look?
Certainly. One of the reasons that we chose to use the map from Jefferson County is based on our work with Jefferson County on the hazard mitigation plan. We've worked on that with them for many years. We also work quite a bit with West Metro Fire. West Metro Fire helps us review some of our plans. They provide service in both Lakewood and in Jefferson County. When we looked at the requirements for the state and we looked at the requirements for Jefferson County, we think that the core requirements are the same. They both meet the same standard. We did feel that this was a better representation for Lakewood. When we look at the data that was provided in the Jefferson County plan, how they determined these areas, the things that they looked at and things they investigated to come up with this area, it was much better suited for us to be able to enforce this. For example, the state bases their area on a geometric shape. It cuts through the middle of homes. It comes through some parts of neighborhoods and not others. Very hard to identify. Where the Jefferson County plan is set up with boundaries that we can actually identify we can regulate too. The Jeffco plan takes into consideration things like topography. It takes into consideration the source of fuel, the time it takes emergency responders to get to a location, the access areas for emergency evacuation. It takes into account a whole host of ideas and concepts that go into determining how they classified each area. When we looked at the state map, we had difficulties ourselves in determining why is this area included, why is this area not included. The Jeffco plan helps answer many of those questions and helps us take a look at what that is. It is a much bigger area than what was shown on the state map. What Jeffco determined on this map is the area that's in pink is the highest source of danger because it's, in this case, most close to large areas of fuel. As we move from west to east, the danger gets a little bit less, but again, the two blue areas are both termed in class 1 and are both regulated the same way.
Thank you.
Councilor Ryan.
If I understand this correctly, if I was able to build an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, 750 square feet, that would trigger these requirements, correct?
Yes, it would.
If I need to do foundation work, I need to add a whole bunch of piers around the exterior of my house because the areas in light blue tend to have weird soils. Would that trigger it? Because it'd probably be more than 25% of my value of my house.
If the work that you were doing was replacing piers, it would not trigger these requirements.
What if I'm adding piers?
If you were adding piers, it still would not require that. If you were also going to change all of the siding on your house at the same time or add an addition to your house, those are the actions that might trigger this requirement.
Okay. If I replace my roof completely?
You can replace your roof completely in accordance to the current standards, which also meet the WUI standard, without having to do any of the site mitigation or any of the other issues.
The retroactivity, the provision making this retroactive, could someone explain exactly how that's going to work?
I'm going to let the city attorney answer that question.
Thank you. Gus Kank on behalf of the Lakewood City Attorney's Office. So when it comes to retroactivity, there's only a few items that are retroactive. One, conditions arising after the, this is from section 1431030E. And so it first off says that the provisions of this code shall apply to conditions arising after the adoption thereof. And that's clear enough. It means, everything that comes after we adopt this code. And it also applies to conditions not legally in existence at the adoption of this code. So if you've built something unpermitted or it's not supposed to be there, it's not up to code, however, then this would apply to that. And it also applies to conditions that, in the opinion of the building official, constitute a distinct hazard to life or property. So that's the third, that's really the second element, something that has an extreme extra risk of danger. And that would be something that would be better defined through the rules and regulations that the building official is authorized to adopt pursuant to this code.
Can you give me an example of one of those types of conditions?
I cannot. I'm an attorney, not a building official.
Right.
Fortunately.
And that's part of my hesitation on this is there's a lot of provisions in here where if someone were to ask me, well, would this trigger that? Would this not trigger that? I think it's still somewhat unclear until we see some of the regulations that might follow or that might be implemented to make this come to life. I'm also a little bit unclear as to what specifically. So say there is a condition that in the reasonable belief of the building official says, hey, this is one of those provisions, and so it's now triggered. now what? Right. Is
So one of those conditions that we might find that would be dangerous is something that was severely overgrown, something that had a substantial amount of dead vegetation very close to a structure. We would consider the other elements that go into determining the danger areas or the level of service in here by things like how close are they to other fuel sources? How close are they to other structures? What is the likelihood that those fires can spread? Those are the things that might be looked at. Those are not things that we expect to go out and seek and find, but occasionally those types of things are brought to our attention. It may also include people that have enormous amounts of stored material next to their homes. Those are the conditions that we would look at. If we encounter a position or a situation like that, we would do just what we do in every other type of code enforcement operation or building enforcement. We would start with a notice of condition. We'd send a letter. We'd say, we've seen this condition. We're concerned about this. Please come in and talk to us about this so that we can help you work through this issue. If that persists through the course of not contacting us, not reaching out, then we take that to the next level. We send another letter out. We give them more time to comply. We do our best to work with homeowners in these situations. Our goal here is safety. That's what we're looking for. That's what we want to help people through. We're not interested in finding people. That's not what we're looking to do. But sometimes we run into those conditions where we need to step up and say, this looks like this could be a big problem, and we want to resolve those things before they get to that level.
Mayor, I do have more questions, but I also understand there may be other people who want to ask some questions.
Yeah, we'll come back to you. Counselor Lowe.
Thank you. Thank you for the information, and I really do appreciate the thoughtful questions that other counselors are asking. A couple things. Going back to this question of, so the worry has been raised, I take it in good faith, that hailstorm, roof is totally replaced, suddenly we're vulnerable to all kinds of costly modifications. So Mr. Ensel, one part of what I heard you say is the roofing, we already have requirements on the materials that have to be used for the roof replacement. This doesn't change that to make sure that it's sort of complying with fire code. The other worry is that if a terrible hailstorm destroys your roof and suddenly this code comes into effect, maybe you suddenly have to remove a bunch of trees and brush that you didn't otherwise have to remove. I think the provision you referred to to sort of reassure folks that wouldn't apply is 14.31.170, where it lists some exceptions, and the second exception is the reconstruction, replacement, alteration, or repair of the existing exterior roof covering of an existing building. That makes clear that it only applies to sections 170 through 190, but those are the sections that involve sort of removal of brush and trees in this immediate buffer. And it's basically saying if you have to replace your roof because of an emergency like that, you don't have to do any of these buffer modifications that are in 170 to 190. Do I have that right, Mr. Kensel and City Attorney's Office?
Yes, that's correct. That's the section that applies to those types of repairs and that do not apply or trigger those site modifications. If you also take a look down below in Class 1 interface requirements, you'll see that we do ask for plantings to be removed within 5 feet, that 0 to 5 foot area, when you do that addition or when you construct that new building. You can imagine how difficult it might be to construct a new building and not disturb that area within 5 feet of the outside. When it comes to the trees, the requirement actually says no new trees will be planted in that area. And there's a provision to allow trees that are at least 10 inches in diameter to even stay within 5 feet of the structure. The caveat on that is it needs to be trimmed, pruned correctly. Now, the small trees in that area we would like to see go because those are the size of trees that are adding to the danger of igniting that structure.
Great, but just to put a fine point on it, there's no homeowner in Lakewood that's going to have a catastrophic hailstorm, have to replace their roof, and then suddenly discover as a result of the roof replacement from the hailstorm that they suddenly have to replace or trim trees, unless those trees were already out of compliance with code and already out of compliance with existing code and already should have been trimmed before the hailstorm. Is that correct?
There's no requirement to remove any trees except in that 5-foot zone unless you're doing that. So that would be correct. Your roof is not going to require you to take down any trees on your site.
Okay. Moving on, the code refers like dozens and dozens of times to the building official. In the definition section, it kind of references another part of the code to explain who the building official is. Could you just explain to us and the public who the building official actually is in practice?
You bet. So the building official is in charge of the building plan reviews. He is our expert on the existing codes that we utilize, because many of the codes in this will refer back to codes in the ICC, the International Code Council codes. He is the one that's going to make sure that we adhere to the code requirements that are presented in this code that adds to the other codes. So the building official is already an existing position. He's already doing this work. He's going to expand that to make sure that we're including these requirements.
And what department is that? Public Works, or where is the building official located?
The building official is part of the Public Works Division under Development Services.
Got it. One of the things that the briefing materials made clear is that part of this is an effort to comply with state law that was passed in 2023 and requires us to modify our code by April 1st, with the code going into effect by July 1st. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So technically, we're already like 3 weeks behind on actually complying with state law, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And a decision was made, as has been referenced, to sort of, some of this is complying with state law, some of this is a judgment was made to sort of align with what the county is recommending. I mean, I'm aware that, I mean, the county has gone through like you would know better than me, but a multi-year effort to sort of stakehold this and draw on a lot of, subject matter experts around what Jeffco needs to make us more resilient and mitigate and prepare for wildfire, correct?
That's correct.
And so, I mean, everything in this code is either just straight up complying with the 2023 state law or is in compliance with the recommendations of this Jeffco multi-year, very extensive sort of effort to make sure that that the WUI areas in Jeffco are as hardened as possible, right?
That's correct. And the code is really designed just to meet those state requirements. We aligned that code to better match up with the Jeffco format, how the Jeffco present that code, with the largest difference being the actual area that we're looking at.
Right.
For the WUI.
Well, I'm honestly, I got to admit, I'm a little torn here, because on the one hand, I think that some thoughtful questions are being asked, and I appreciate that these are thoughtful questions. On the other hand, I think we're getting very thoughtful answers to these questions. I am concerned that we're already 3 weeks behind on complying with state law, and I got to be honest, I am worried about council delaying implementation of this code as we head into what multiple members of council have pointed out is going to be potentially a historically dangerous wildfire season. I am bearing in mind the scenes of mass destruction in LA from a couple of years ago. Given the realities of climate change, the risk of wildfire is not just like a peripheral threat. It's something that we've been briefed on as a council is a very clear and present danger to Lakewood. So. And I'm not suggesting that these changes are not they're not totally trivial changes, and I think it's important we understand them. But I'm also a little reluctant to significantly delay adoption of this, given what I see as the very real public safety stakes of doing. These are clearly best. Removing vegetation when you're building new structures in the middle of the WUI when you're at risk of a wildfire is a best practice that, folks that have been studying this for years have been recommending to communities like ours. So I do want us to just bear that in mind. Given that the map is overwhelmingly focused on wards 4 and 5, I'm very interested in, what the ward 4 and 5 councilors think. If ward 4 and 5 councilors overwhelmingly clearly want this to go to third reading, I'm open to that, but I really don't want to delay this more than that.
Councillor Furman.
Thanks. A couple of quick questions. One, you were saying a siding replacement would trigger the planting removal and pruning. Is that so? I'll admit that's one of the ones that concerns me more. So I certainly support hardened standards and codes around siding. I guess my issue is when I look across Ward 4 west of Union, I think if someone, there's a lot of, I know this from having to redo my siding soon, there's a lot of places that are likely going to need that eventually. And that's, so my first question is, does a siding replacement trigger that? And then I have a follow-up on that.
No, I don't believe that that will trigger that. Because that would still fall under 14.31.170.
Okay.
And that's the, includes replacement.
Okay.
So if you were replacing siding, that would not trigger that. So the attorney tells me that that's only applicable in Zone 1. Zone 1, remember, is that 0 to 5 foot section.
Understood. Understood. So you're saying it would trigger it, but only in Zone 1?
That it doesn't.
Councilor Furman?
Yeah.
So it's, if you look at subsection 1431.040H2, there are certain exemptions from work under this code. One of those being the repair of the exterior walls of the existing building, which includes the siding. And if it's more than 25% of the siding being replaced, then it would trigger the code, and it would put you under 170. I want to make sure I'm not misstating anything, so I'm going to scoot on down to that section. 14.31.170A1 subpart A. Only structure ignition zone 1 standards apply to the reconstruction, replacement, alteration, or repair of the exterior walls of an existing building. So it depends on the scope of the replacement that you're doing, whether it would be triggered at all. And if it is, as Mr. Hensel said, it would be just the zone 1 standards.
Okay. Understood. Then that essentially answers my first question. My second one is, so the other place it gets triggered is a 500 square foot addition, 500 square feet or more. I'm assuming we're talking about total gross square footage.
Yes.
And then when it triggers that, does it trigger it in relationship to that addition or in relationship to the entire structure?
In relationship to the addition.
Okay. And I'll be honest, one of the reasons I ask is, again, I support health, safety, and welfare. I think I actually have to sign that every 2 years. But obviously my concern is some of these, when they get triggered, there's big impacts when you look across parts of Ward 4 as it pertains to some of the things, and this is going to be a generalized question, but as we see some of the things impacted, like retaining walls, you can imagine some of these properties may have trees that naturally will never get to that sort of diameter, right, within that 30 feet, for example, that I believe the trees are still impacted within the 30-foot realm, but for being trimmed up or removed, am I correct?
To be pruned.
To be pruned, okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I understand that is there any other exception, and I'm thinking about other codes when I say this, right? When we talk about, for example, accessibility, there is a cost component, right? Where when you reach a percentage of the value of a project, you're not required to, or at least it used to be, right? Is there any other exceptions driven by the overall cost of these kinds of situations? Imagine someone with significant retaining walls within that area that contains the 30 feet, that sort of thing.
So the answer to your question is no, there's nothing in the code that refers or limits the repairs based on cost.
Okay.
With respect to retaining walls, all retaining walls in Lakewood are required to be of some sort of non-flammable material already.
Okay.
So the requirements that are in here aren't really going to apply to specifically retaining walls.
Okay, understood. All right, I think that's the questions I have for the moment.
I've got Mayor Pro Tem Sharzai, then Councillor Ryan, then Councillor Nystrom.
Can you talk a little bit? I know there's a process where people can exempt themselves if they believe they should be from the map. Can you talk what that process would look like?
Yes, so we do have a process there for people that don't feel like they should be included in this area. That process is that they provide us a report by a professional that understands the requirements. That report extends approximately 300 feet from their residence. We review that. If we find that there's sufficient cause to agree that says that they don't have those hazards in that particular area, they can be exempted.
Okay, thank you. And then looking at the budget impacts, I understand there's going to need to be some expertise here. Are the fees that may come from this, from people asking to be exempt or from any violations that may occur, are they meant to like net neutralize that, or what will that go towards?
So the fees will be our hourly review fee.
Okay.
So it's what it takes us to review, that's what we would charge back to the customer on that.
For the exemption, but what about other fees we may collect from this?
All the other fees are already included in our general building permit fees. So there's no additional or new fees for this other than the review of that report if they ask to exempt out.
Okay, I think that's it for me, Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Ryan.
If we're looking at this map, do I understand correctly, if we need to be compliant with state law, we would need to address the areas that are in red?
If you're doing construction in the area that's in red, then that's where the Class 2 requirements would apply to your structure.
If there was a concern about, well, we're already late, so we need to adopt something quickly in order to be compliant with state law. If we wanted to be compliant with state law for step one and then perhaps go beyond what state law requires, would we just need to be able to say this applies to the areas in red?
No, that would not meet the requirement. The area in red is designed to be, or expected to be, susceptible to a higher risk.
Okay.
And therefore it has some additional requirements in addition to that Class 1 requirement.
Okay. The state law requirement isn't the light blue areas, for example.
The state requirements also have a Class 1 and Class 2 area.
Understood.
So it's consistent with the way that the state has identified that the actual area is different.
And that's my question. If we were just to focus on the specific areas that the state law would require us to deal with more immediately, it would be the areas in red.
So the state map, and from recollection, barely extends past the C-470 area. It may include some of the areas in Bear Creek Park. It may include some of the areas up on Green Mountain, but it barely affects very many homes. If I were going to make an estimate, I would say that it probably affects less than maybe 200 homes. It's a fraction of the area. It barely has any impact to what we're looking at.
Okay. Going on to some of the other questions that were asked, just to make sure I'm clear on this. If I need a roof replacement that's greater than 25%, or if I need to put in new siding more than 25%, so exterior walls or roof, I need to then do something next, correct? That I'm obligated to do something, right?
So the process would be if you're going to make one of those types of repairs, both of those repairs already require permits to be submitted in Lakewood. So you would submit the permit just like you would at any time. We would identify that as being a permit in the area. If, for example, you were going to replace your siding, we would flag that so that we can check the type of siding that you're using to make sure that you're using a material that's compliant with the code.
And I guess I'm not quite as concerned about, mind you, the ideas that you guys are trying to accomplish that you and your team have put together, laudable and certainly makes a lot of sense. I'm just trying to make sure I understand. In addition to, for example, if we use the siding as an example, if I have a tree within 5 feet of the house, that tree may have to go now.
Yes, potentially, yes.
And that's triggered because if I'm replacing more than 25% of my siding.
Yes.
Okay. And I think this is where some of the difficulty is starting to percolate from the community as to really understanding these issues. And so while I understand from Councilor Lowe's comment, and I take it certainly his comments were right on the money, that there's some urgency in order to comply with state law, but there's also some urgency in making sure that our community understands this, because frankly, I don't completely understand all of these things, and just based on the answers that we've gotten, it seems like there may be a little bit of learning curve from all of us on this issue. And the idea that, for example, Jefferson County spent years working on this. Now, of course, it worked certainly with subject matter experts, but there were also a lot of community meetings and a lot of public information to make sure that folks understood exactly what the impacts are going to be. And that feels lacking to me at this point. So from a council, if I'm going to signal to council where I'm at on this, is I am certainly willing to say that to the extent that this is implemented to comply with state law and only state law, I'm certainly a yes vote on that. And I'm willing to do the work to get to making this more expansive, because I can see that there's a lot of merit there. But I think there may be some other issues that we need to be thinking about that aren't just from the dais. So that's where I'm at on this.
Councillor Nystrom, then Councillor Cruz, then Councillor Sings.
Thank you. And thank you for taking all the questions. I know this isn't a lot of fun, right? I agree with Councillor Ryan's last comments. And my concern is, I know you guys have done a lot of work on this, and it's probably very tedious, but I don't think there's a comfort level or an understanding, you know, again, what triggers what and when. And if nothing else, if we call out, like, this is for new construction only, and if that's applicable, new construction or repairs, I guess, right? If that's applicable throughout the code, then can we call that out? Because I think, you know, we've had public comment tonight. I've gotten a number of emails. There's comments on Lakewood Speaks. I think we really just need a little bit more clarity. And again, in terms of what the state law is, that to me takes precedence. If we're, you know, kind of going back and forth between the two or trying to clarify some of this, I think that would be a more effective way to do this. And I understand there's a timeline on this, but I do think it's important that we're ensuring that the public and all of us here on council, as well as your staff, understands the nuances or what's triggered when. I'm not sure if that's an easy thing to do within the code. Maybe it's a clarifying document that we could revisit or something to that effect, but I just don't feel like I'm comfortable with this. I know we have some residents that are not, and I would like to try to get that resolved before we implement something.
I didn't hear a question in there. Did you have a question?
Well, yeah, I mean, can we extract the trigger points, or can we stipulate what is applicable in terms of new construction or repairs? Just call that out so that people are clear on what's being asked of them, or what might come up in the event that they have to do a significant repair, or they have hail damage, or whatever the scenario is.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Nystrom. I think maybe what you're getting at is maybe like and we could develop this into a handout, but for this situation, this would be what this would trigger. So to the questions that have been posed tonight, if your roof is replaced, what does that mean? And if you're in the light blue versus the dark blue versus the red, and almost I envision like a matrix or something, so that you can see clearly what the impact is based on what you're doing to your home, and then what that implies. So we can certainly develop something like that again could be developed into somewhat of a handout or a flyer. We have had this item on Lakewood Together, soliciting input, and we have responded to a number of questions, but I think we can go a little bit deeper and be more specific.
Thank you.
Councilor Nystrom, to be clear, were you wanting to propose that something different gets voted on tonight, waiting for that, or you're just saying, please bring forward more information?
I would prefer that we get that information, we revisit it. Maybe the best path forward is a third reading. Because, again, I don't want to just implement something and not have clarity. And we get that matrix that'll clarify a few things, or maybe additional questions. So I guess my ask would be that we move this to a third reading in order to get that information.
Okay, thank you. I have a few more hands up, and then we'll kind of see what makes sense as far as moving forward. Councilor Icreus, then Councilor Sinks.
Thank you. Appreciate the conversation so far. Just a couple of questions to touch on just some of the specifics that have been brought up so far. So in looking at the state map that you were referring to, I know you made a reference to the geometric nature of the map, but I just want to make sure my understanding is correct. It seems like from looking at this map that the state sort of placed hexagons together and used that. And it seems like if you look at the map, it's cutting through different properties. It's exempting properties right next to each other that are right off of Hayden Green Mountain Park, for example, right, which are understandably similarly kind of at risk. And so is sort of the understanding that like there's just not that on the ground understanding of our kind of community from that state level.
So you're correct. That's what their map does show. That's how they show that. We're able to identify those areas, but we're not able to answer that particular question is why this house and not this house? Why? Because they're so tight together, this neighbor has to be subject to this code and this one doesn't. We really felt that the Jefferson County Code went into that level of detail. It gave us the information we needed to be able to assess those items and say, this is why we think that you're included in this area.
Okay, yeah, and that makes sense. And just from a layperson's perspective, without having context on why the state did it this way, it does appear rather arbitrary and geometric, as you pointed that out. I just wanted to make sure for anybody who might not be looking at the map that was clear. I also heard a question earlier that I just wanted to make sure we all understood. It seems like enforcement continues to be complaint-based, but then there may be some kind of triggered enforcement based off of any inspections or interactions related to permitting. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so there's not any further proactive enforcement envisioned in the way that this ordinance is created?
No, we do not plan on follow-up inspections or routine or random inspections. But if something is brought to our attention, we will investigate.
Okay, great. That's helpful. And then the last piece, just a comment that was submitted on Lakewood Speaks from somebody who seems to have experience in contracting in Lakewood. Their main concern is sort of about tightening the code and making things a little bit confusing. I think that has been uplifted tonight as well. Maybe potentially incentivizing unpermitted work. And they bring up kind of an option, a thought, or to address this by maybe pointing to any fast tracking or pre-approved sorts of designs or other pieces to help incentivize compliance, help with anything. Is that something you're aware of, any other cities, or is that something that we're considering as a means of helping make this as understandable to citizens as possible?
We don't currently have any plans to fast track these types of reviews. We think these reviews will come in and be reviewed just like all of our other reviews, but with a different set of standards. I alluded to earlier that when we reach out to people in this area that are applying for a permit, we'll specifically let them know, hey, we need to know what type of siding you're using, or we need to know what type of materials you're using for your deck, so that we can better take a look at those materials and get those materials approved faster, so that we're not doing research on every type of material. But in lieu of that, that's what we'll do, is we'll look into those materials to make sure they meet all of the requirements and specifications.
Okay, that's helpful. I think maybe the suggestion was, since maybe there is a certain type of deck or certain other type of work that citizens may be embarking on, that they're not really going into this with huge opinions on the types of wood or anything like that, that potentially it could be helpful to have some templates or some other kind of pieces that would be understood to already be sort of up to code that could help people kind of move forward faster. But it doesn't sound, I'm not sure if that's like something that you all tend to do in the building department or are thinking about as a way of mitigating maybe some confusion with the code. It sounds like no.
We would not be opposed to putting together a list of pre-approved materials, especially for things like some of the decking materials, some of the siding materials, even some of the fencing materials. That'll take us some time to do that, because manufacturers are putting out new products quite rapidly right now to respond to these needs. As we look at those materials and determine that those are acceptable materials, we'd have no objection to creating a list of those materials.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sinks.
Thank you. In our packet, we received a letter from the fire chief of West Metro Fire Protection. Appreciated that. It was dated January 26th of this year. And it says in the second paragraph, regular meetings have been held to work on the code's adoption and implementation. I wonder if you could tell us, since that letter was written in January, have there been ongoing meetings still? And maybe what the nature of the discussion and just the input that you received from them to create this, to help create the code. Could you go through that?
Certainly. It was our discussions with West Metro that first prompted us to explore the Jefferson County criteria a little bit more in depth. Again, West Metro not only serves Lakewood, but they also serve Jefferson County. So to have some consistency of the type of code and how the code is applied aids them in what their mission is, aids us as well, because as we cooperate across, between the two agencies, we have an understanding of what to expect from each other. Most of our conversations revolved around that. We had additional conversations that revolved around some specifics of the criteria as it related to things like the 500 square foot exception, some other things like that. Since we've moved forward, we've had fewer of those meetings.
Great. Thank you. As I said, I live in the White area, and as I walk across my grass, it's crunchy because it's so dry. I can only imagine in the blue, dark blue, light blue, the red, how crunchy that is and how dangerous it is. And so just to signal to the council, with knowing that West Metro supports the codes and knowing how dry things are, I would be very hesitant about delaying this any further. So thank you for your work on this.
Councillor Furman, then Councillor Black.
Sorry to keep coming back to you, but I just want to make sure I'm clear on some of these. And I'll be clear, my concern being mostly around the siding piece, because personally I prefer people not be dissuaded from hardening their siding because they're afraid of having to spend, $4,000 cutting down trees. So I'm trying to make sure I understand this. So I'm just circling back to this 25%, it's coming from the state code. So the reality is, to be in compliance, we have to maintain the 25%. And there isn't really a mechanism to exempt out, say, plantings or the fence or some element of that. It's, if you are within that 25%, you're meeting all the 5-foot requirements, right?
We're going to look that answer up.
Okay, sorry, and I don't mean to keep asking it. I will say my concern at this point, the only concern I have left, because you've done a great job explaining all of this and making it all clear, so I really appreciate all the time and effort and in clearing all this up. My only remaining concern at this point is the limited scope of possibility where you have someone who would be dissuaded from properly doing a siding job because of extra costs they would take on because it just extended beyond the 25%,
So I might answer that question by saying that we looked at cost. We understand the significance of cost. We understand the significance of adding more resiliency to construction, right? The materials that are going to meet these requirements are also going to last longer. They're going to be easier to maintain over time. And we understand that comes with the cost. There will certainly be an increase in cost. However, we took 3 semi-randomly selected homes from the WUI area. We took a home that's applied for a permit up on Green Mountain. We took one that's located kind of just north of Hamden, over next to the Jeffco border. And we took one somewhere in the center. And what we wanted to discover is we wanted to take a look at the home, how it was being built, and how it would be impacted by this code if this came in today. This example right here, they're already using a material for the siding of their house that would meet the requirements. They already have a Class A roof that meets the requirements. They have double pane windows, which also meets another critical component of the requirements. What we can't confirm by the drawings that were submitted was, did they provide the venting system, the screens? Chances are no. That's a relatively small cost. We also can't tell by the plans that were submitted, did they include a deck? Because we do think that there will be some added costs with decking materials. We can see that we have a fence here, cedar fence, and we know that fencing will probably add some costs as well, depending on the setback from the home to the property line. Those are the big areas that we see costs coming from. The point is that a lot of the questions regarding replacing siding and things like that, it's hard for us to answer those questions on cost because we don't know what the baseline is. We don't know what that resident is planning to do with that home. They may already be planning to use a material that meets that requirement, and therefore there's not really an additional cost there. If they're looking to use a traditional kind of wood siding, yes, then we can expect that there'll be some increase in cost to do that. Again, that's more of an initial cost. It's hard for us to also take a look at what that cost down the road is, what that maintenance and what that longevity will do for that that material. But yes, we do think that that will add some cost, and that is certainly a negative of the process. But if we want the resiliency, if we want the protection that these type of materials brings, that's what this code is about.
Understood. Yeah, and to be clear, I'm actually less worried about the cost of the material in the house because I think there is a value, exactly that. And that's actually, I guess my point is, I would hope that we don't dissuade somebody from doing a proper siding job because the concern of costs, actually it's really the plantings that are the biggest concern for me within that 5 feet. I don't know you've answered everything pretty well, so I don't know that I have a critical breaking concern at this point because it seems pretty limited where this is going to impact anyone, considering, and I just want to make sure, I'm asking this question because I know the answer, but just so other people are aware. When we talk about 25%, it's 25% of the surface area of the walls, not 25% of the building. So, and my point I'm making and asking it in a question just so people hear it is, you could replace all your siding, and as long as all your siding doesn't go beyond 25% of the surface area of your walls, it's not triggered.
This code is new for us as well. We're trying to determine, how we apply that. But yes, we would look at siding as an overall impact of the structure.
Yeah.
So there may be, as you see on this structure right here, there's multiple different kinds of siding. We would have to look at the shell of that house all in total.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Black.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here tonight and for taking this long barrage of questions. So appreciative. I think one of the broader issues at play right now for us is the difference between the state standards and the Jefferson County standards. So can you re-clarify for me? You've talked a lot about the reasoning behind using Jefferson County as being tied to the map. There were cutoffs in the middle of houses and weird crossovers with streets. Are there additional substantial differences in the Jefferson County Code versus the state of Colorado Code? For instance, we've been up here talking about siding, which is a bit more granular. We're getting into the details of the code. Is the siding a component of the state of Colorado Code, or is that a more stringent or strict variation in the Jefferson County Code that we've chosen to take?
The two codes are very, very similar.
So the main difference then, for clarification, is the map.
Yes.
Okay, and then we have to approve the state of Colorado requirements. That is also true, correct? At minimum. So we could approve something that is more stringent, that is a little bit deeper down, but at minimum we must approve the state of Colorado codes. That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay, and then that's great to hear. So they're not substantial changes. The reason that we might delay on this, in my opinion, is that we might be looking at some substantial differences between Jefferson County and the state of Colorado and the ways in which we would apply those two things. But really, fundamentally, we're looking at the same code with a different map system.
That's correct.
Great. And then I just have a couple more questions that I don't know if you're going to be able to answer. They're more rhetorical, so I just want to share them, and please feel free to say no. Do you have any estimates on the increase in wildfires in the state of Colorado over the last 5 years?
No.
Okay. Do you have any estimates on the increase in wildfire season from months? So it started out at 3 months, but now it's grown to 6 to 8, let's say, in the last 5 years?
No.
Okay. Do you have any estimates on the substantial increase in cost to homeowners if a major wildfire sweeps through a municipality?
No.
Okay. Just a few more. Do you have an estimate on the increase in projected insurance to homeowners for sitting in a wildfire location that's going to substantially increase their insurance costs over time because they have not mitigated some of the fire issues that they might have in their area?
No.
Okay. And finally, do you have an estimate on the projected increase in heat and dryness in the state of Colorado that will contribute to significantly more wildfires and a longer wildfire season in this state?
No.
Okay, totally get that, but thank you for taking the time to let me speak on that. Great. I think that you've answered all my questions to the best of your ability, and thank you for taking those rhetorical questions as well.
Councillor Black, before I hand over to other questions, we still have a few hands up. I can elaborate a little bit on the difference from my own personal perspective of the state map versus the county map. My home is not in the state map. My home is in the county map. And we live not far from the Bear Creek Greenbelt. So having been a city councilor during the Marshall Fire and then talking to residents time and time again after that happened, many of us that live down there also remember that there was a fire on Super Bowl Sunday at a golf course that could have very quickly ended up my neighborhood being very much like what happened in Superior. So there, I appreciate them looking at the Greenbelt as fuel rather than just stopping at C470, because we know that the reality is a fire would most likely not stop right there. And the golf course and the Greenbelt and the things that we enjoy as we walk outside our front doors every single day is also a risk to our future livelihood. So I don't know firsthand that that is part of why they built it in, but I understood personally as I was going through this information why my neighborhood was then included with the county map. So if that helps. Hands up, I have Councillor Nystrom, Councillor Ryan, and then, oh, did you put your hand back up? I might have just forgot to undo it. Councillor Nystrom and then Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, just to reiterate, at a high level, this is targeting new construction or significant repairs, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And additions. We'll include additions with that.
So I guess with respect to the timeline, this isn't going to make any difference if we delay it a couple weeks to get all of this clarified and in the spirit of transparency, provide more information to residents. It is important, but it's not something, if a wildfire starts tomorrow, it's not going to stop it, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So I just think we hear transparency over and over again. And I think, you have stipulated this is new code for you. We've had several different people answering questions. So let's just boil this down and make it palatable for people to understand. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for 6 months to, keep regurgitating the problem. Thank you.
Councillor Ryan.
So I move to replace the proposed map with the state map as an interim, and that we can continue to have the discussions, have community feedback to figure out how best to implement this on a larger scale. But if our goal is to also, in terms of a timing issue, to comply with the state law, I'd like to start with the state law. So I move to replace the proposed map with that submitted by the state under state law.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Really quick before we vote on something, just to make sure, is that something that staff could do? Can we uncouple them?
So the local map that was created in the state map, there are certain differences in the code. There's differences in the different classifications, and it would require a deep dive into the code to see whether the current version that the council sees before them tonight would effectively work with the state code as is. My expectation is there would have to be some modifications to language throughout that refers to at least the interface interior, the interface perimeter. Those aren't contemplated in the state map. So it wouldn't effectively be able to just put the state map in and have this code refer to it. There would be some confusion that we would need to clarify and revise this code accordingly.
We could refer to the state those areas designated by the state map is the same as what we have for light blue, for example.
I apologize. I don't
So
understand.
The proposed map, it has the light blue areas, whatever we're calling that. We could refer to those areas designated under the state map as being consistent with that in light blue that we're using. Again, this.
That might not be clear enough. Maybe could an alternative be the vote tonight is passing the code but matching it to the state's map? Would that make it easier? No?
I don't think so. Counselors, I would recommend that we let us go back. Instead of trying to do something in the interim, we do have until July 1st to conform with the state. While they ask that it be adopted by April 1st, the intent is to begin enforcement by July 1st. So we do have some time to reevaluate and maybe come back with a recommendation instead of trying to fit something to the current proposed code or map.
So if Councilor LeBure is willing to withdraw the second, I'll withdraw my motion.
Say you don't have to with Robert's rules, but go ahead.
Oh, that's true. Okay. Well, then.
I appreciate the clarity.
Instead, then, I move that we set this for a third reading.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. I do have one hand up that I would like to honor. Councilor Lowe, do you have something to say before we vote?
Yeah. I'm very reluctantly willing to move forward with a third reading if that seems to be the place where we've landed. I do think that's a much better place than trying to sort of rejigger this on the fly from the dais. I think on the one hand, folks are reacting to constituent feedback, which is reasonable, and that makes sense. And so if the Ward 4 and 5 councilors, given that it predominantly impacts their wards, would prefer to go to the third reading, I'm willing to go along with that. I am a little concerned that what's going on up here is after a lot of time and effort has gone into making sure that Lakewood follows a set of best practices that some people that have spent their entire careers have recommended that we take in order to mitigate a very serious risk. I'm just worried that in response to a handful of concerns, some of which, and I say this with great respect for the concerns that have been raised, I think these are reasonable questions, but I think some of the concerns that have been raised had very straightforward legal answers that we were able to get to just with a little bit of Q&A with staff in the last hour. So it does kind of feel like there's a little bit of a couple of concerns that have pretty straightforward answers, or maybe some concerns that are frankly a bit half-baked versus 2 years of thoughtful stakeholding and scientific experts. So I'm just naming that dynamic. But I also understand that members of council are reacting to concerns, and in fairness, we have not had a study session on this, so I'm not surprised that people have some questions about this code, even though those questions may have very straightforward answers. So in that spirit, I think a 2-week delay to a third reading to ask some more questions, make sure that we really understand everything in this code deeply before we pass it is reasonable. I do want to signal that I don't think we should delay beyond that. I think when we come back here in 2 weeks, folks should, if they have very, very targeted, thoughtful amendments that don't revert back to the state map or undo 2 years of work, those amendments should be circulated with lead time based on the procedures the policy procedures that Councilor Sinks just codified tonight. So we should all see those amendments in advance. If folks want to circulate amendments at a third reading, they can. But I do actually think that we should move this forward with the Jeffco map. For the reasons that Councilor Cruz articulated, it does seem like there's a reason to believe that the state map, we're hearing this from staff, is not as well targeted as the more localized Jeffco map. So I'm willing to support a third reading tonight, but I think we should pass it in 2 weeks.
Councilor Cruz, Councilor LeBure, then Councilor Freeman.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just love to understand and make sure that if we are to move to a third reading, when we have this conversation again, that us on council and then also maybe staff understand what needs to happen between now and then to move things forward. Because I feel like maybe what is being requested, and I just want to maybe articulate that, is just some clearer information about what is in here, about applicability to be able to educate the community instead of policy changes, which is fine. I just want to make sure that that is what we are expecting before we move to this next reading, or are there policy questions that have not been answered? I will just pose that and appreciate it. Again, recognizing that this does not necessarily affect my constituents as much as it does some of y'all's, so I do want to be deferential in that.
I lost track of where I was. Councilor Furman, were you next? Or LeBure? Okay, go Furman, then LeBure.
I'll be quick. I will say two things. One, I am 90% comfortable, but would rather do the third reading for a couple of reasons, which is to say, I think there is a component of taking the time that is going to be valuable for those of us who might have a ward meeting, those of us who can answer a few more questions, because I think a lot of the concerns that were addressed for me tonight, I think it would be great for those to make it out into the public before we move this forward. Otherwise, I know it seems odd to take that approach, but I think it is super critical. Secondarily, I actually do want to spend a little time in the areas I'm most concerned about in my ward, because of the thing I'm still concerned about is the likelihood of some impacts to, frankly, it's going to sound trivial to some, but significant planting impacts based on somebody choosing to do hardened siding, which I think is a positive thing. I think technically the hardened siding is actually more beneficial than the defensible space, depending on the particular siding. People can debate me on that. And there's a few who might win. Anyway, thank you.
Councilor LeBure, then Councilor Nystrom.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to comment a little bit. I think some of what, piggyback maybe a little bit on Councilman Furman's point, but also I think some of what I think some of us are responding to is to some things that maybe should have been done earlier. I was kind of taking a look at some of CML's best practices that they talked about a little bit in Breckenridge last year about some communities who went through this process. And some of the tips they made were engage folks early and have consistent messaging and be transparent. And I think some of those things are some of what we're responding to is maybe, as a city, if we could have engaged earlier with the community and had some of these Q&A things kind of spelled out, that probably would have helped, mitigate some of the back and forth. And then also I think some of his response to I'm looking at some of the counties' reports about, some of their engagement and things that they did over the past 6 months or so. And I just think there hasn't been enough engagement around these issues for the community. I'm looking at some of their community outreach. They did mention they sent out mailers to registered neighborhood associations. They posted on social media. They got a letter or an article in the newspaper, and there was a Denver 7 story. But they also kind of talk about some of the community meetings. They had a community meeting in December 2nd and 3rd, and also on the 16th. Some of the attendance was pretty light, though. On the 2nd, they had 28 people. On the 3rd, they had 14. On the 16th, they had 15. So anyway, I'm just bringing that up to point out that I think, with more engagement, if folks were having these discussions in their wards and all that kind of stuff, and we had some of those Q&As and those talking points about some of the key issues on this, I think those are the kind of things that could, mitigate that kind of pushback, I think, in the future. But I certainly think it's important to have robust code. In fact, when I first heard about this code, I was at a Metro Mayor's meeting, actually, learning a little bit more about this and learning about it from some of my former colleagues on council and Dr. Cog. So I thought it was a great idea that we need to be taking a look at hardening our future building materials and taking a look at these codes. But I think doing it right and doing it well and doing it with community buy-in will serve us well. So anyway, that's my comment. Thanks.
Councilor Ryan, then Councilor Sinks.
So with that, Councilor LeBure just said it better than I certainly could. But I would love to invite staff to our Ward 4 meeting on May 9th It's going to be at Green Mountain Rec Center at 12:30. It would be wonderful if we could have someone from staff be able to present. Councilor Furman and I have had a number of conversations as to what the topic is going to be. We have, I think can safely speak for both of us. We're going to jettison any of those topics and just have this one, because I do think it's going to be important for our community to hear some of these things. This seems like it makes a lot of sense. I think there's still some questions. It would be lovely if there was a matrix that was mentioned that could be part of that presentation so that people could understand exactly what's happening and what the impact is, right? And it's like, if I need to replace all of my siding, I'm going to have great siding in the end, but I may have to remove a tree. I may have to replace my fence. I may have to do any number of other things. And I can speak for the neighborhoods that I've walked up and down the hills on. That's probably the case for a lot of folks, that is a realistic possibility. So I want us to go into this vote with at least some modicum of community outreach and a little better understanding as to what the impact of what this is. And hopefully it's minimal. And if it's minimal, then that's the message I would love to be able to get through in the Ward 4 meetings.
Councillor Sinks.
So I do remember a study session on this. I don't know when it was. I don't know if anybody remembers, but I know I learned about WUI at that time. And so I know we had a study session, and it's kind of playing out as I'm hearing comments. I'm not hearing any policy clarifications that we need. What I'm hearing is, let's delay so that we can get out there in the community more. And we only have one meeting. I know staff was just invited to a Ward 4 meeting on the 9th, and the 11th is our only regular meeting in May. And, we can still put out the matrix, this is what it means, and granted, it's always nice to be transparent and let everybody know beforehand. And I suppose it's human nature. We've seen that over and over at different topics. It's human nature not to worry about something until, oh no, it's the vote. And now let's really get serious because we're going to vote on this. And so I'm sorry that we all are humans and have that human nature. So am I clear that there's no real policy that we're asking for? Is staff thinking of any policies or any policies that we want?
I mean, I can certainly chime in. Based on the Ward 4 meeting, there may be some policy changes. The problem is trying to get this information into the community to have that discussion as to whether there should be some policy changes. I'm certainly not going to second guess Jeffco and the work that they've done, but there may be something that we're just not even thinking about. But at the very least, I want to make sure that the community has an opportunity to hear about this, because this is going to have potentially some pretty significant impacts on our homeowners, and maybe all for the better. But I think it's worth getting that message out to the community a little bit more than what we have. And I think several of us have been looking at this for some time, so this is not just a reaction from the dais, at least speaking on my behalf. Yes, this is not just a reaction to a couple public comments that were lifted here.
And Councillor Sinks, I would like to commend you on your memory. We did, in fact, have a study session on this topic a year ago this month. Okay, that is it for my hands up. So we have a motion on the floor and a second to move this item to a third reading. And with that, please go ahead and cast your vote on moving this to a third meeting or not. Well, the third reading would be in the next regular business meeting, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Excuse me. May 11th is our next meeting.
Okay, and that passes 9 yeses and 2 noes, the noes being Black and Sharazai. All right, that is item number 9C. I would imagine 9B. 9C, likewise, we probably need to move. Okay, I'm seeing nods. All right, so do we have anything we need to do to move 9C?
Yes, Mayor, you need to table the matter to May 11th.
Okay, so for item 9C, we're going to table that matter to the 11th. And
Sorry, point of order. Do we need to actually do a vote or no? Okay.
okay, we need to do a vote to table the item to the 11th. May I please have a motion?
Mayor, I move to table ordinance O-2026-15 until May 11th.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any discussion on that item? Seeing none, please go ahead and cast your vote. That passes 11 yeses and 0 noes. Will the clerk please read item 9D into the record?
Item 9D, second reading and public hearing on O-2026-16, adding a new chapter 2.59 to the Lakewood Municipal Code, establishing the Sustainability Advisory Committee.
All right, we have no public comments signed up for this item. This evening, anyone in the room like to speak to item 9D? Nope. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And may I please have a motion?
Mayor, I move for the adoption of ordinance O-2026-16 on second and final reading.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and the second. Any council discussion or debate? Seeing none, please go ahead and cast your votes. All right, and that passes 11 yeses and no zeros. No no's, 0 no's. That brings us to our second and final public comment non-agenda item this evening. And I have Gary Theendyer signed up for public comment. Welcome.
Good evening. How are you all tonight? Thinking wildfire and fire mitigation, and I'd like for all of you to bring rain for the next 2 months, please. That would be great. Is there a camera ability to put this up?
Yes.
Is that correct right there? I'm Gary Theander, address 2130 Kipling Street, Ward 2, with Ms. Cruz. So, Madam Mayor, council members, I'm going to take you back to October of last year. You saw this map during the adoption of the new zoning map, and Ms. Cruz was willing to bring before you an amendment to that map at that time to rezone the 4 properties that are shown along Kipling Street, 2130 and 2190. My wife and I own. 2100 is my neighbor to the south, and 2270 neighbor to the north. I represent my neighbors as well to rezone us to a mixed-use zoning, which you unanimously approved at that meeting in October to amend the map. With what's happened since then and what took place on April 7th, that has all changed, and I've spoken with Travis, and that's all reverted back to the 2025 map before that. You may not recall, Isabel informed you, 3 years ago I met with one of your planners, and he pointed out that, my goodness, we landlocked all of you back in 2012. We probably should have changed your zoning at that time. Because of the MNU zoning to the north and south, and directly behind us to the east is an MRU zoning. So we were landlocked. So I'd like to come before you and ask you to see if you can't discuss, and I know Isabel was willing to do that and talk with you, Travis, I believe, as well, to see if there's a simplified way to put a group of us that are wanting our zoning that took place last year to stay in place and to go back to that. And so I just put that before you. A consent agenda, next meeting would be wonderful, but I know that's probably unlikely. But I thought I'd come before you and just put this out there, that there are some of us that want the zoning that we had worked for. This particular situation is a little different because it wasn't really related to the whole new zoning concept. It was just something that I feel was missed 14 years ago now. So that's all that I would like to say. I appreciate your time. Appreciate what you do. Not easy doing all the things you do, but appreciate your service to our community very much. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that closes public comment for tonight. And that moves us on to, we have no items in general business or executive report, so we'll move next to City Council reports. And with that, we'll start this evening with Ward 5. Yeah.
Start again with Ward 5.
You get it out of the way early.
Okay. I had another concept in mind for the Ward 5 meeting, but I think what I'm going to do is, if staff is able to attend the Ward 4 meeting, I'm going to piggyback off of that, and we'll make another combined ward meeting this month. And I'll clarify that in the next couple days. I just want to reiterate that, we have this Arbor Day Foundation proclamation here. I think we need to bear in mind that we do not have tree protections in residential lots, which many municipalities and many states do. Denver does. And I think we need to work towards that as quickly as possible, because we cannot afford to lose any more mature trees. And planting seedlings is a great thing, but mature trees are what is basically providing us our oxygen at this point. And we all know we have a severe air quality issue, and we're not going to get there if we are not going to improve it if we continue to remove mature trees. So I guess, if you just read the proclamation and the positive aspects of trees, it's very enlightening and it's very purposeful for the situation that we're in now.
Okay, Ward 4.
Well, I already gave away the tease. Our Ward 4 meeting is at Green Mountain on May 9th at 12:30, and it sounds like we will have a fantastic speaker to talk about the fire code that or fire resilient code that we were just talking about. Also, there's a little bit of a urgency. If you go to Lakewood Together, the survey number 2 for Green Mountain, you'll see it under William F. Hayden Plan Survey number 2. That closes on Friday, so Friday, May 1st. So if you are someone who's ever used the Green Mountain trails and are interested in it, I think it would be very helpful to have you fill out that survey. This is a long-range plan, and your input's going to help design that long-range plan.
I don't know that I have anything to add. Thank you, Councilor.
All right, Ward 3.
Ward 3, we do have an upcoming Ward 3 meeting in a couple of weeks on May 19th, Tuesday, May 19th, at our, what's becoming a tried and true location, Lakewood Social House in Belmar. It'll be at 5:30. Ward 3 Commissioner, Planning Commissioner, and Chair of the Planning Commission, Stephen Buckley, is going to join us. It's going to be a listening session for residents to come and share feedback and thoughts on where we go from here on the zoning code in the wake of the special election. We're very interested. It's mostly going to be just a sort of a listening and hear feedback by me, Councilor Cruz, and Commissioner Buckley. We're very interested in feedback from residents on where we go from here. We just ask that residents model the notion that we can disagree without being disagreeable, and that we really try to practice some of what Councilor Sinks urged us to model up here around civility in that conversation. Will really help that go a long way. We want people to feel welcome on that. Again, that's May 19th. I did just want to note, and the mayor very helpfully provided some information close to real time to council on this, but I just wanted to recognize the almost 800 jobs that were eliminated with the PNC First Bank merger a couple of weeks ago. Really concerned about that. Frankly, does feel a bit like a bait and switch, given First Bank's statements at the time of the merger that this was going to be sort of a win-win. Really genuinely concerned about the impact this is going to have on a lot of Lakewood residents. I understand that economic development is coordinating with Jeffco and the state to support the employees that are affected, which I'm really appreciative that our staff is working on that and coordinating on that. I would just say if anyone out there either is directly affected or knows someone that is, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll do my best to send that person to city staff or get them connected with resources. We obviously want to be mindful about the fact that that's a real hit that a lot of families in Lakewood took. On a lighter note, my significantly better half is very involved in the Belmarsh Sustainable Neighborhoods, and he dragged me along to the Belmarsh Bio Blitz on this weekend. It was a good time. We saw a bunch of critters and plants in Belmar. It was one of many Earth Day. Let me see, what day was that? That was Saturday. And it was one of, I think, a bunch of events happening around the city to celebrate Earth Day. So all we needed to do to have good weather for Earth Day was not have a centralized Earth Day celebration, have a distributed Earth Day celebration in a bunch of different areas. And Councilor I. Cruz's parents were even there, who happened to be Ward 3 constituents, fun fact. So it was a good time, and I think there's going to be some more cleanups in the neighborhood in the coming weeks. And I'll turn it over to Councilor Cruz.
Thank you. So for years, Lakewood has recognized Pride through proclamations, and I just want to take a moment to thank council members who've helped carry that forward. That recognition matters. And now, within collaboration with community members, small businesses, and partners, we're taking a next step, and we're bringing Pride to life here in Lakewood. This will be our first Pride celebration, and we're starting intentionally. The date is going to be June 20th, 2026. This won't be a large parade yet. This is just the beginning. Instead, we're building something that's very community-driven. It's going to be a full-day Pride experience. Small businesses are going to do offerings, specials, events, and activations, primarily within Belmar, but other businesses within Lakewood have been sharing interest. It's going to be a very walkable, connected celebration. And I'll be honest, part of the reason, that I wanted to push this was based off of the conversations that I've had with community, specifically who've lived here for years, where they still haven't felt that they've been fully seen, welcomed, or belonged. So that really stuck with me. So, this is the opportunity to change that together. So if you are interested in being part of it, still looking for businesses, organizations, and community members to be a part of it, you can reach out to me, ken.cruz@lakewoodco.gov. For me, this is just more than a day. It's really celebrating space here in Lakewood, where people feel seen, valued, and like they belong. And then I will also state, if you were able to catch the State of the City, one of the primary goals was, our local economy and businesses. One of the best way for you as a community to help achieve that goal is to ensure that you're shopping local. So I'll go ahead and end there.
Ward 2.
Thank you. First off, I just wanted to say we had a wonderful Ward 2 meeting recently, and we chose to host it at the senior living residences at Creekside, one of our Metro West Housing Solutions properties. Through a raise of hands, approximately 40% of the people at that meeting had never been to a ward meeting before. So it was a really powerful and really positive experience. And I just want to extend a huge thank you to Metro West Housing Solutions for hosting that, and to, in particular, Kirsten Cuthill and Daniela Dillon, who helped us with all the logistics around that Saturday morning meeting. It was such a wonderful opportunity to meet some new and different residents. We have an upcoming meeting on Thursday, May 21st at 6 p.m. at Washington Heights Art Center. So definitely mark your calendars for that. And then finally, I just wanted to extend another note of gratitude for volunteers. As someone who manages an organization that has only 2 employees, I cannot overstate the value of volunteer contributions. It is an incredible way to make an impact in a community. So I just encourage all of us, if you have some time to donate, please give that time somewhere. There are so many wonderful Lakewood and Jefferson County nonprofits that need the help, and we are so, so, so incredibly grateful for the support. Thanks.
Thank you. Just echoing my co-councilor Black's appreciation to Metro West for hosting us. And yeah, it was such a fun meeting, and we went through way more coffee and way more donuts than we ever thought we would. So we'll know for next time to bring more. I think the other things I just wanted to note on briefly were just uplifting again some of the cleanup activities in our community. The Colfax cleanup, an annual event. Preparing for the Colfax Marathon is coming up. That's going to be Saturday, May 9th at 7:30, meeting at the Hub. So hope to see many of you there for the Colfax cleanup. Also, just in appreciation of some of the volunteers who are here tonight and for the Earth Day related activations throughout the city, just wanted to shout out Sustainable Morse Park and Sustainable Applewood for a really successful Earth Day event at the Clements Center. I saw it was really well attended. There were some really fun activities and engagement from students at Slater and other pieces. So shout out to them for a great event. And also, Sustainable Iber hosted a neighborhood cleanup. We cleaned up around 14th and around Ritchie Park and around the light rail path. And I heard late breaking news from one of the folks who came and took the picture that we got 300 pounds of trash. So thanks to everybody for participating in that, and to everybody who's making a difference in the community for Earth Day and for other volunteer opportunities.
Ward 1.
Thank you. We have a ward meeting this Saturday, May 2nd from 9:30 to 11 at Holy Shepherd Church at 920 Kipling, same place as always. And then I also just wanted to celebrate, we have a new bike lane on First Avenue. This happens to impact me personally in a positive way. We have kids that are getting back and forth from school, and just a simple road diet of painted lanes on there has reduced speeds tremendously. And we've heard some really positive things for folks, and also from some neighbors who are getting used to new parking lanes and what the bike lanes mean for them. But overall, just love to see the bike plan really coming to life and seeing the impact that's having on safe routes to many schools in the area. And I'll pass it to my co-counselor.
Thank you. Speaking of things that have come to life, so there was a lot of work with a residential parking program up around in Applewood Valley, Youngfield, 20th, Applewood Drive in that area as a response to a very successful restaurant, a Brewski's, and then there were parking problems with the neighbors. So I was very happy to read an email from a resident in that area. She wrote last week giving her compliments to the vendor that was hired, and the vendor's name, the company's name is Interstate, and they're the ones issuing the parking tickets. And she writes that their professionalism and courtesy are very much appreciated. And that said, there's still some procedures to work out and be formalized surrounding residents who have special events. They host gatherings, and they would have a need for more parking. And so things are still to be worked out. But as a whole, this has been a very successful program, and we especially appreciate the work of Mike Whitaker, too, on staff. I believe his title is Chief Traffic Engineer, and he's been very responsive to the neighbors as well, and so things have really moved, and it's been a very successful program, and we appreciate everyone's work on that. This was also then along a different line, kind of the time for neighborhood association annual meetings, and the four or so Iber Neighborhood Association met the 16th, and us four councilors, wards 1 and 2, were able to attend. And then last week it was a Mid-Lakewood, my neighborhood, Mid-Lakewood Civic Association meeting. So we're very thankful for those citizens that work hard on these associations and bring people together, and really have some nice events. And so thanks to everyone involved in those. And that's all I have.
You didn't go? Did you go? Okay. I'm just falling asleep. Never mind. All right. I will bring us home, and I will try to do so quickly and succinctly. In honor of Earth Day, I wanted to mention a few things for residents that may not be aware of some of the goings-on in the city, or the new goings-on in the city. So we do, looking in Lakewood, it mentions all of these that I'm about to mention. So if you have not seen that newsletter yet, look in there for more information. But we do this year very excitedly have a new free reusable building materials program that is a pick-up program. So no longer requiring that someone always needs a vehicle with, a back truck apparatus to be able to move some of these large things. You can learn more information about that at lakewood.gov/pickupdays. Pickup PICK-UP days. They are only one day a month. That is something, it is a new program that we're doing in partnership with Resource Central. So I can imagine that these, the lines will, they'll have waiting lists. So definitely let us know in advance. But what it is they're accepting things that are items that can be basically used to build a new home, build something new. So appliances and things like that. The list of availability is all on the website. We also have woody drop-offs that will be soon available one time a year for free at the Jefferson County site. So that there are fees that normally come with dropping off that's like the debris, maybe that we were talking about earlier this evening with, fireproofing or trying to reduce fire risks of our homes. Is where you can go drop off lots of, leaves and branches and things like that to clean that out. Again, we're trying to avoid this going to the landfill. So now we do have the ability to do one visit a year at no cost. So that is at lakewoodco.gov/woody. And then also several resources we're hearing over and over and over again right now. We're going into drought conditions, and there are a number of resources that our residents can use to start to reevaluate their yards and make changes to their yards to reduce the amount of water that we are using. That helps, of course, the environment, but also it will, most especially right now, help the pocketbook. So I'd encourage everybody to look into those. Also, just want to quick mention the Neighborhood Participation Program. That is a grant program that the city administers every year, upwards of, I believe it's 150,000, 160,000 max for grants in neighborhood areas that you may want to improve. That may look like drinking fountains or little walkways or all kinds of things. One of my neighbors was able to secure funding for some playground equipment in one of our parks. So So lots of different ideas out there. The pre-application is due, I believe, is it Friday? Is Friday, May 1st? It's coming up really quick. So for anybody that's a little bit interested, check that out. The pre-application is due on May 1st, so please go ahead and submit that. And then finally, you've heard a lot from this council about addressing homelessness, and that is something that still continues to be the top thing that we hear from our community, the top request to address, and we are continuing to work very hard on that topic. That this week will look like most of us sitting in a room with most of our Jefferson County partners, that is other city staff, county staff, as well as elected officials from across the county, to have more of a conversation around how we can all show up in partnership to address this very challenging and big solution together. So if anybody would like to join this big conversation, it will be occurring basically all Thursday morning. Thursday, April 30th. Oh, there's my answer. May 1st is Friday. So Thursday, April 30th, it starts at 8 a.m. and it will be at Glory of God Lutheran Church. So anyone that's interested would like to join us, you certainly can do so. And other than that, just wait for, we're going to continue to keep working on this, and we'll report back what we have as soon as we have it. So that is it for my reports this evening, and seeing no further business tonight, we'll go ahead and adjourn tonight's meeting at 10:10 p.m.